Our speaker today is Cliff Weitzman. He graduated from Brown in 2016 and, in a very Brown-like fashion, did an independent concentration during his time here. He is the founder and CEO of Speechify, which employs 67 people in 15 countries and gives reading powers to more than 10 million users today. Cliff listens to 100 audiobooks a year and in a very Brown-like style, also created his independent concentration. Today, he'll be sharing his stories, lessons, and covering topics from friends to success and happiness.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cliff Weitzman. Thank you, Josephine. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Startup Brown, for hosting me here. People seem a little bit relaxed, so I'm going to raise the energy in the room for 1 second. Usually works. All right. I'm glad you guys are here. My goal today is to make sure that the information in this talk will, at some point, hopefully, radically alter the trajectory of your life, because the things you learn here will help you make better decisions. The first thing I want to talk about is how to make decisions, which is really one of the most effective skill sets there are, because the decisions you make really govern what is going to happen with your life. And so when I was at Brown, I ended up developing a framework for how to make decisions that's been super useful throughout my life. And so I'm going to share that framework with you, as well as the more non-obvious principles that I developed during that time. The second thing I'm going to talk about is, let's say you're a student at Brown right now, and you want to start a startup and be running a multi-billion-dollar company in the next 4 years. Practically, tactically, what are the things you need to do in order to do that? And the third thing I'm going to talk about, which really is the most important, is how to optimize for happiness, both as a student, but more importantly, after college. Does that sound good? Yeah. Great. Before I start, I'll give you guys a little bit of more context on me so it makes sense why I think in the ways that I do, which are a little bit unusual. So I graduated from Brown a couple of years ago. When I was here, I did an independent concentration in renewable energy engineering, which is a mix of physics, engineering, computer science. I took classes in 15 different departments: industrial design at RISD, biotechnology, chemistry. I have very severe ADD, as you could probably guess. And so my brain goes a mile a minute, and I'm interested in everything. So like Justin here, who skipped 2 years of Brown, during one of which he worked at Speechify, I just wanted to try a lot of different things. And I figured that if I studied one thing, I wouldn't get a good enough experience from being in school. And so what I ended up doing is designing a system that allowed me to do that. The second thing that I did while I was a student is I built 36 different products. I started with a 3D printed skateboard brake that I built. Then I built a bunch of iPhone apps and websites and a payments company and photovoltaic cells. And my thesis was, in reality, this is not how you make progress. You make progress by going down one path, and then you slam into a brick wall and you crumble. And then you pick yourself back up, you go again, and you go against that brick wall again. And you do that over and over and over again. And so with focus is how you actually make true progress in the world. And so after that 4 years of Brown, my goal was to come up with one thing I wanted to spend the rest of my life on. And surprise, during those 4 years, I did not figure out what that one thing was. So later, I'm going to tell you how I ended up figuring out that thing. Now, before Brown, a very important thing to know about me is I'm super dyslexic. So first, second, third, fourth grade, I had a really tough time learning how to read. And I was lucky. I had 2 very unconditionally loving parents. And I had 4 very supporting younger siblings who would read to me when I couldn't read well but for myself. And eventually, my dad read Harry Potter to me. And I loved it so much that he recorded himself on a cassette tape, and I would listen to that thing over and over and over again. And so though I hated books, I loved stories. And when I moved to the US from Israel when I was 13, the way I learned English is I listened to Harry Potter audiobooks 22 times in a row. And 13 years later, I still have the first chapter of Harry Potter memorized. And so I went from being someone who hated books to being someone who was obsessed with audiobooks. And so I started listening to about 2 audiobooks a week, about 100 books a year, and I've done that for the last 14 years. When I got to Brown, surprise, it turns out that most textbooks don't have an audiobook. So my plans were foiled, imposter syndrome full. They're going to realize that this has all been a charade up until this point, and I have no business being at Brown. And so the summer before I got here, we got a summer reading book, Sons of Providence, which is a book that to this day I hate, and I do not recommend anybody read Sons of Providence. And I spent the entire summer trying to read this book, and I didn't succeed, surprise. I finished about half of it. And now we have like 48 hours till I'm about to board my flight to Brown. And I'm not going to be that one 18-year-old that shows up not having read their summer reading book before their fancy Ivy League school. Surprise, nobody else had actually read the book. But I was freaking out. And so I did the only thing that I could. I hacked my computer, and I made this little text-to-speech thing that would read the entire book into my iPhone overnight. And then I listened to that on the plane, and that worked. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just solved the biggest problem in my life. And then when I got here, I built a tool that would parse PDFs, and it would read those too. And then I started hacking on this app that would scan physical books, and it would OCR them, and then it would turn that into an audiobook too. And that's how I got through my classes. Because I had this trick, I didn't need to sit at my desk to do most of my work. And so I did other stuff with my time. Really, I just built stuff. I would go to hackathons, I would go to pitch competitions, I would spend a ton of time in the industrial design department at RISD, and I'd figure out how to make things. And that was the thing that I really enjoyed doing. And then when I was about to graduate, I started working on Speechify. And so I'll start the actual proper part of this conversation, which is, okay, how do you make decisions? And so, one of the categories of books that I read a lot of is philosophy books. And so it's interesting when you read more philosophy, you realize that one of the most common thing between philosophers, Aristotle, Nietzsche, Benjamin Franklin, is they all have a table of values that they develop by which they govern their lives and make their decisions. And when I was at Brown, there was a class I took called The Shaping of Worldviews with Nissimo. It takes place in sales. And it was an interdisciplinary course that was a university course. And the final assignment for this course was a 30-page paper you needed to write about your worldviews. So I sat down and I wrote these 30 pages about my worldviews. And it ended up becoming a little bit of a summary of my life until that point and what I thought about different things. And after writing those 30 pages, I distilled them down into 22 principles that are unique about how I approach the world that most other people don't use. And that led me to make a lot of decisions from that point onwards that most other people would not make. And so I'm going to run through some of these unusual principles with you guys. The first one is the love is the most important thing in life. And it is one of the only things in life that the more you give of it, the more you have to give. It actually breaks the laws of thermodynamics. If you give love to somebody else, you don't lose love yourself. It's like a candle where you light one candle and it does not extinguish the original flame. You can light as many candles as you want with the original one. You can also think about it like a jug of water where as you pour water out of it, it gets bigger. And so that's a huge principle in my life. And whether it be in my relationships with my siblings or my parents, with my friends, with my teammates, with other people, the more love that I can give to other people, the more happiness I get back in my life. And this is not, a principle that I'm bringing from religion or a principle that I'm bringing from philosophy. It's like what I have observed when looking back at my life and cataloging where my happiness has come from. The quality of those interpersonal relationships are the most important thing. All right. That's one example of a principle that is non-obvious, that the more you think about it, the more you come to a clearer conclusion. You find that as you listen to a lot of books or read a lot of books, and as you write and as you speak, your brain is like a computer. You can download as much data into it as you want, right? So I listen to 100 books a year. That data is not useful to me if it's not organized. And so it's one thing to download a lot of data into your computer. A more important thing is to update your operating system on a regular basis so that you can use that data to make better decisions. And so we'll talk about computer science in a second, but I took a grand total of 3 computer science classes when I was at Brown. Really, I took only one very important computer science class, and I suck at computer science. It turns out that if you can't spell, and you spell an algorithm in way A over here and in way B over here, surprise, the program crashes. And so no matter how much I wanted to be someone who knew how to do computer science, I was very bad at it. And the first CS class I took, I was a sophomore. I took CS 15. And I was the worst student in the class. Andy Clock was the first project that we did. It took most people 3 hours, maximum 5 hours. It took me 18. So what I would do is I would go to the Radi, I would take a bag of bread, I'd make it into 8 peanut butter sandwiches, and I'd sit in the computer science lab from 8 in the morning until 9 p.m., sometimes midnight, and I would just try to get through the assignments. And it was really tough because I would misspell everything. And eventually we switched from Sublime to Eclipse, which are different text editors. It's like, the Word doc, but for writing code. And this one has spell check in it, and it completely changed my life. And so computer science is something that anybody can do. It's very, very easy to access. But one of the most useful things about computer science is not the fact that you can build stuff, but the fact that it gives you all these ways of thinking in frameworks about life. You can take all the data structures and algorithms that you learn to use in order to organize data and apply them to how you think about the world. And so another good example is there's a classic algorithm in CS, which is a topographical algorithm for finding the highest point in a map. And so in life, there's explore and exploit mode. Explore mode is where I was when I was at Brown. I was like, I'm going to go to every single place. I'm going to study biotechnology. I'm going to study philosophy. I'm going to study chemistry. I'm going to take classes at RISD. I'm going to go to MIT. I'm going to go to Harvard. I'm going to go to Stanford. And I'm just going to explore things. I'm going to go to South Africa. I'm going to learn about the world. I'm going to try things. And when I find the thing that I really like, I'm going to be super focused on that one thing, and I'm not going to let anything distract me. And so this is an actual algorithm in computer science that people often use. Another very important principle for me is the idea that, there's IQ, which is intelligence quotients. There's EQ, which is emotional intelligence. Most of us are familiar with these ones. But there's a third one. Let's see. Oh, test 1, 2. There we go. Thank you. But there's a third one, which is much more important than both of those. And it's AQ, adversity quotient. Adversity quotient is how good you are when life starts smacking you in the face. Like, how much does it take to get you to stop? And when it comes to the amount of joy you get in your life, and definitely the amount of success you have as an entrepreneur, AQ is the most important thing. And so the way to think about it if you're doing a startup company, or really any important project, people ask, why do startups fail? And sometimes people say because of co-founder disagreements. That's a good one. Sometimes people say because startups run out of money, and money is the lifeblood of a startup. Nice attempt, but it's when the founders give up. And the founders give up when it stops being fun. And so the way that I look at it is when you're working on a company, it's like you're a Jeep and you're going through the savannah and you have air in your wheels. And if you get to 0 air in your wheels, you're done, it's done. You gotta make sure that you have a block of air in your wheels at all time, even if it's small. And so that block of air in your wheels comes from figuring out what are the things in life that give you energy. And so it might not be related to work. For me, it's family and friends. So I call that the love category. It's adventure. That's generally going on trips or doing things that are just like weird and fun. It's music. I just spend a lot of time on music. And it's fitness. And so I just make sure that those categories are filled to the brim, no matter what. A lot of people include sleep in these categories. I don't know why. I function perfectly well on very little sleep. It'll probably bite me in the butt in the long term. So I'm working on changing. But I find that as long as I fill these categories, even if the business is going horrible, which I'll give some examples later, I'm still happy and I keep going. There's 2 more principles I want to talk about. The first one is the idea that you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter what people tell you. You can do whatever you want. Right? There's a great Steve Jobs line, which is the world around us was built by people no smarter than you and I. And you go through life, people tell you don't bang into the walls too much, but really you can change anything you want. The sport that I did growing up is called parkour. It's like a mix between gymnastics and martial art. And it's the art of going from point A to point B in an urban environment as quickly as possible. A lot of time you'd like climb a wall or run on a roof. And so in life, let's say I want to get into this building and the front door is locked. Oh, well, I can't get into the building. Well, that's inaccurate. You can go through a window. You can climb the roof. Like, you can do a lot of different things. You can still get into the building. And so you can do anything you want, even things that most people consider physically impossible, give it enough time. And I'll give a couple examples. In a second, I'm going to say one more principle, which is in life, often you are faced with option A and option B. Do a master's, go work in investment banking. But always, there are also options C and option D that are non-obvious to most people, and they take a lot more effort to achieve, and they take sometimes a big chunk of luck, but they're better. And there are many situations, not all, but some, where it's worthwhile to invest the time and take the risk to try to optimize for option C and option D. So the way I learn best is through stories, because I listen to audiobooks like a crazy person. And so I'm going to tell you a couple of stories from my life where it made sense for me to go for option C and option D. And I'll go from most frivolous to most serious. When I was a freshman at Brown, somebody stole my backpack, and it had my laptop inside it. And I worked a lot the summer before to afford this laptop. And it happened right there in fonts. And I was like, there's no way someone actually stole my backpack, like 0 chance. And I had put my backpack and my longboard right outside this classroom, the piano room, because I was playing. And it was gone. And I was like, maybe I forgot it somewhere. So I went to the ratty, it was gone. I went to the main green, it was gone. I was like, someone actually took it? And so I went and I asked them, hey, do you have security footage of what happened? And they were like, yes. And I was like, great, can I see it? And they're like, no. And I was like, why? Well, why not? And they're like, well, only DPS has access to it, and DPS is not working today. And I was like, okay. So I called DPS, nobody answered. So I went to the DPS station, and they were like, yeah, the only people who can show you this is a detective, but we don't have any detectives on call today. And I was like, okay, I'll wait. And so I just waited in DPS for 3 hours until somebody finally came, because they had this weird brown student who refused to leave. And I was like, hey, you don't understand, somebody stole my laptop. I literally will fail school or have to work on an HP if I don't get it back. Can you please help me look at the security footage to see what happened? And he was like, you can't see the security footage. And I was like, well, can you see the security footage? And they were like, yes. And I was like, amazing. Can you go see it? And so he agreed. And so I got in his car with him. We drove to where they keep all the security footage. And he was like, you can't come into the building. And I was like, that sounds fine. And then I went to the building anyway. And I sat next to him, and we scrubbed it, and we found the video of somebody stealing my laptop. And it was like this 6'2" guy, white dude, looked very sketchy, clearly not a brown student, wearing a gray hoodie and a blue vest and a blue cap. And I was like, wow, somebody actually stole my laptop. And I can't show it to you now, but I actually have this video still on my phone. And so I'm sitting there with DPS, and they're like, okay, go back to your room, live your life normally. We'll tell you if we figure out what happened. And I could tell they were not going to do anything. So I refused to leave. And I was like grilling them, how often this happened, where does this happen, like how often did they catch them? Turns out they almost never catch them. And I was like, well, if I stole a laptop, what would I do? Maybe I'd try to reformat the hard drive so that I can reset the password. So I got to go to every Apple store in Rhode Island. That was like my new idea. And once I exhausted every Apple store in Rhode Island, I would go to every Apple store in Boston. So I went to the mall, the Providence Place Mall, and I started walking around towards the Apple store. And as I'm walking to the Apple store, I see this guy sitting in the corner, charging an iPhone, with a blue vest and a blue cap and a gray hoodie. And I was like, holy cow, that's the guy. So then I go to the security guard in the front, and I was like, hey, that guy stole my laptop. And he's like, do you have evidence of this? Hell yeah, I have evidence of this. And so I pull out my phone, and my phone's out of battery, because I've been sending this video to everybody else at Brown to be like, yo, did you see this dude? He's like, sorry, I can't help you. So I went to the guy, and I was like, hey, my friends told me you found my laptop. I couldn't be more grateful. I wanted to give you a reward and say thank you. So he stands up. He's like, I don't have your laptop, kid. I don't know what you're talking about. Starts walking away. He's like, no, you don't understand. My friends told me you found my laptop. I just wanted to give you a reward and say thank you. He's like, I don't have your laptop. Leave me alone. Exits the mall, sprints towards the train station. So I start running after him. Now the guard is with me, running after the guy. Guard takes 3 steps, turns around, goes back to the mall. So now I'm chasing this dude, 25 feet away, just in case. And I was like, hey, I want to give you a reward. My friends told me you found my laptop. He's like, I don't have your laptop. Leave me alone, kid. I was like, I know you have my laptop. Take it out now and put it on the ground. He's like, I don't have your laptop. I was like, I know you have my laptop. Take it out now and put it on the ground. This is your last chance. Last chance. I was like a very small freshman at the time. Police will not follow you. I will not follow you. Just put it down now. It ends here. But if not, I will chase you till the ends of the earth until I get it back. I will chase you to Boston. I will chase you to New York. I will chase you to LA. I will chase you to San Francisco until I get this laptop back. The guy looks back at me. He's like, I've stolen the laptop of an insane man. He opens his bag, he takes out my laptop, and he puts it on the ground. I pick it up, give it a little kiss. Take out my charger and put it on the ground. It's like $50. So he takes out my charger, he puts it on the ground. I get my stuff back, I go back to the mall. I found my stuff in like a trash can, like my graphic calculator, my thermos. And Brown TPS picks me up. And now they need to write a report about what happened. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Actually, no, I'm not allowed to tell you guys, so I'm gonna skip this tidbit. Anyway, there was other shenanigans. But, I remember sitting on the steps of the Ratty, and I had like classes and stuff. And I was like, okay, do I dedicate the rest of my life to trying to find this laptop, or do I go about my day like a normal human being? And my decision was, I'm going to dedicate my life to finding this laptop. And my expectation is that there's a 3% chance that if I do this, I'll get it back, and 97% chance I won't get it back. But I was okay with that math. Because, if I ran this equation over and over, for me at the time, that was a worthwhile thing to do. The only problem was I put myself slightly in danger, like that was a stupid thing, but other than that, it was the right calculus for me. And I knew that if I went to the first Apple store, the second Apple store, the third Apple store, eventually I would get this guy. And that's a very important math to do, is if you have your whole life in front of you, and I think I'm gonna live to 150 years old, I think all of us will, it's worthwhile to do things that are hard. I call this going ham. And you gotta choose when are the moments in life that you want to go ham. And some moments are inappropriate. For example, like pulling an all-nighter for a not important class. But some moments are important, like what you want to do with your life. So that's a very important principle to pick up and use. A much more important example of this is, I did one internship when I was a student. I was a product manager at a company called Retail Me Not. And it was a very nice company, super smart people, carrot juice on tap, but I hated it. Like, I didn't think my manager was that amazing, even though she was smart. I didn't think the CEO was that amazing, even though he agreed to do like coffee chats with me once a week. And I considered very seriously quitting in the middle of this internship. But I already moved to Austin, Texas. I had a department, they were paying me decent, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna stay. But I was terrified because I had a lot of student loans. And I realized the rest of my life would look like, working 9 to 5, working in like a nice tech job, but that I wasn't actually that passionate about. And I was like, well, how do I solve this? Because I have all these student loans. So, you can take option A or B, work for Goldman Sachs or work for Google, or find option C and D. So option C and D was find a way to pay off my student loans. And so I had worked on all these projects. Some of them started making me money. That was great. But I also realized that if I applied to scholarships, there was a high probability that I would win them, especially scholarships that had to do with dyslexia or ADD or energy or math or Jewish people from Marin County. And I wasn't a US citizen at the time yet. And so I made a Google sheet numbered at 1 to 100 for scholarships that are $5,000 and above for students who fit my criteria. And I found that it was relatively easy to write the essays. It was very hard to find scholarships I was likely to win. So what I did is I hired 10 freelancers in the Philippines to find and apply to scholarships to me full-time. And I gave them access to the sheet. I uploaded every essay I'd written in the past to a Google Drive. And I gave them access to my calendar, and 24 hours before every application was due, they would add an hour-and-a-half block on my schedule for me to edit the final essay and submit it. And my return on my investment of employing these folks was like 5,300% in like a 3-month period. And now it's free. Now I didn't have student loans anymore. And I was like, this is amazing for a couple of reasons. Number one, hiring people is dope. And I was getting paid like 30 bucks an hour. And the average person in the Philippines working as a nurse makes like $1.50 an hour. So I paid people $3 an hour. So for 1 hour of work, I could employ 10 people. And I was like, I should always hire people to do things. And number two, okay, now I can do more interesting stuff. So I graduated Brown, and I really didn't want to have another job, but I still needed to make some money, to survive and stuff. And so what I ended up doing is I went and I taught computer science at a place called Make School. And it was an amazing experience. So though I don't like, working for a boss, I really love teaching. And so that was an awesome experience. And I took that job for 2.5 months, and the plan was to come back to Brown, even though I had graduated, and stay here for 10 months of the year, and then work over the summer to support myself until I found the thing that I wanted to spend my life on. And that was a really hard thing to decide on, because to all the outside world, it looks like you're a failure. You're not doing a master's, you're not getting a job. What, are you just like a bum? So like, what does your mom tell her friends when they ask her, like, what is your son doing? But for me, this was the obvious thing that I needed to do. So what I did is I convinced 2 of my professors to sponsor me as a visiting scholar to stay at Brown. And I just worked on projects. I built Chrome extensions, I built, apps. I kept trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I came up with a couple of principles as a result of doing a lot more reading and a lot more writing of what criteria I wanted for whatever I ended up building. And so the first criteria is, above everything else, I want to be the person that I needed most when I was young. And I concluded when I was young, there was a couple of things that I needed, but the most important thing that I needed, uniquely me, that others did not, is I needed someone to read my books to me. The second thing is I didn't want to build like a $1 billion company. I wanted to build something that would be a $100 billion company. And I was like, okay, if that's the criteria that I'm going after, what's important? Number one, it needs to be something that could not have been created technologically a year ago. Because if it could have been created, somebody else would have built it. And number two, it needed to bank on some sort of trend that was new in how people behaved. And the third one is, through all these different things that I had built, I realized that software was the nicest thing to build a business in. And so actually my capstone was I built this photovoltaic cell that was really efficient. And I was gonna do that as a company full time. But I realized that it would take me like 7 years to get that physical product to actual place where people would use it. Well, at a certain point, I built this little iPhone app in the Ratty, and then I published it, and 2 months later it had 100,000 users. And I was like, it's a lot easier to build software and get it implemented. So I was like, okay, it needs to be a software business. And right around that time, deep learning started to get really good. Deep learning is a subcategory of artificial intelligence that mimics the way the human brain works. And it's very good at pattern recognition. It's like a black box. You give it a bunch of data, and then it processes that data, and it figures out how to do the outcome that you want. And deep learning is really good. At the time, it started getting really good at 6 things. Optical character recognition, speech synthesis that is higher quality than what used to be, natural language processing, transcription, translation, and recommendation engines. And so I pulled all those things into one product. The problem is it took about an hour of processing to do a second worth of speech synthesis back then. And I was like, no problem. I'm going to build all the infrastructure around it, and when the technology gets really good, then Speechify will become amazing. And I didn't even know what the name of the product was going to be at the time. Speechify was a name that I started, I was in the gym with a friend of mine, and I was trying to figure out what to name it, and we talked about Speechify, and I was like, the problem is it's not a good name. I don't like the name. And they're like, why don't you use it as a placeholder? And I was like, oh, I'm going to use it as a placeholder, but I'm going to replace it as soon as I can. And then, I'd go and I'd tell people about it, and they're like, I don't know about this idea, but I really like the name. And so eventually the name stuck, and today it makes sense. And so I just stayed at Brown and worked on stuff. And there was one exercise that I did that was very useful to being able to do that. And it's a, fleshing out fears exercise. So the thing that people are most afraid of in life is the unknown. Right? This is why people are afraid of the dark, by the way. And so if you don't get a job after college, what happens? It feels bad. You feel maybe embarrassed, like you're not moving forward, but actually, what happens? So I sat down, I opened the notebook, and I wrote out what would happen. And I was like, well, I'll probably go home, live with my parents. And I get annoyed at my dad because he tells me what to do sometimes. And I'd probably start freelancing as an iOS developer or something. And people would say this. And people would say, well, let's imagine my parents weren't okay with me staying with them. All right, I'll crash on some friends' couches. Worst comes to worst, I become homeless. I could do backflips and raise money with a little cap. My life would not get destroyed. I could bounce back. So if that's the case, why take the job at Google? Let's go do the thing I'm really passionate about for a year, for 2 years. And if then I really still don't succeed, I can go and take the job at Google, but I will have learned a lot more, and I'll eliminate the doubt. I will not feel bad that there's this thing I wanted to do that I've never done. I have followed the things that I wanted, and I made an educated decision that it's not the thing I need to do. I will lose the 100K a year I would have made in salary working at Google. That's fine. I was willing to give that up. I'm going to leave to 150 anyway. So first, love is the most important thing in life, and the more you give of it, the more you have to give. Number two, perseverance and AQ are extremely useful. They're the number one things to lead to happiness and, in my opinion, success in life. And the term I like to use is personal agency. It's this idea that you can change the world around you. And if there was one thing I would give everybody else in the world, is that tomorrow morning everybody would wake up, look at themselves in the mirror, and believe that they can do stuff. Because the world would be a much better place, a much more interesting place, a lot more chaotic, but a lot more would get done. I'm going to give you 2 more stories similar to this, and then I'm going to start talking a lot more about how to build a company and about happiness. The first one is I never sign a lease that is longer than 3 months. And so I flip between houses a lot. And I usually will find the place on Airbnb, lowball, 100 places, and get a place that is awesome. Sam has lived in a bunch of these with me. Justin did as well. Jan has as well. It's a lot more fun. When we started Speechify, we were at Brown for maybe 6 months, and then San Francisco for about a year, and then Palo Alto for about a year, and then traveled Europe for 6 months. And then we went and lived in LA for 6 months, and then Florida for 6 months. We're about to move to London. Number one, Speechify is a remote-first company. We have been remote-first for the last 4.5 years. What I learned is when I have 8 people coming into the office in San Francisco with me, it was like I was in adult detention. Like, no one's going to work if you're not going to be there. And so I'd start working at like 8 in the morning, and I'd finish working at like midnight. And that was like A-okay with me for a long time. But at a certain point, it starts to take a toll on you. And at a certain point, we started hiring a lot of people internationally. In India, Canada, Ukraine, London, Brazil. And I found that it worked equally well to having people who worked in person. This is like way before COVID. And I realized that when I did not, well, the workday now, it doesn't matter 9 to 5. You can work whenever you want. And you can work when you have energy to work. I'm a person that is very productive at night. And I'm not very good at waking up in the morning. And so I work at the times when are most optimal for my energy. And one of the big problems in working 9 to 5 is, let's say you're very energetic, 9 a.m., 10 p.m., 11, noon, you hit a wall. And you don't feel like working. But you still have to sit there and force yourself to work. And then that makes you even less productive. And so it's key to be able to operate in a place where you work when you have energy to work. The second thing is you don't only get freedom of time, you get freedom of place. You can go wherever you want. So that was a very big innovation for me. And it made it possible for us to find all these diamonds in the rough internationally. There were amazing people throughout the world that could join us in the company. And so the first person like this that we hired is a guy called Simeon Kostarinov, who is the best human being I've ever met. When I was at Brown and I was working on Speechify, I got this message. And what I did is I posted on a bunch of hackathon hacker groups and Brown groups. It was like winter break. Hey, I'm working on this app, and I'm working on the iPhone app, and I'm looking for some help. I'm going to do this media hack. If you're free, let me know. I'll teach you how. And this random dude from Bulgaria messaged me. He was 20 years old. And he's like, hey, I love your app. I messaged this to like 10 reporters. How can I help? So he helped me in this project. And then he was like, how else can I help? And I was like, well, you don't know iOS development, but maybe you can help me redesign our website. So I sent him a file. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning. It was done. And I was like, how'd you do this so fast? And then he built a scraper for Twitter that would auto-tweet at people. And then he helped me hire people. And I was like, this guy is such a hard worker. Eventually, I got him a visa, got him an apartment, moved him out to San Francisco. It took him 3 months to become a better engineer than the senior guys we'd hired from Snapchat and Apple. What I didn't know is he was ranked #1 in math in Bulgaria in high school. He later wrote a textbook on neural networks. He eventually became the head of engineering at Speechify. Now he leads recruiting and operations. And Simon's magic, #1, is that he cares. He cares a lot. #2, he learns fast. And #3, he works hard. And that's the archetype for everybody that we hire at Speechify. We don't care if you went to Stanford or NASA or Harvard or Google or Facebook or Brown. Like, pedigree doesn't matter. We care that you learn fast, have fire in the belly for the product, high loyalty to the team, you can ship features fast, and you move metrics. And the core values of the company are extreme product quality, speed, how do we do this 3 times faster than is normal, leading with love, we just take really good care of each other, and frugality. And that's the archetype we look for every person that we hire. And so, Vatsal on our team, for example, is from India. He grew up in a small village there. And he started coding on an iPod Touch, building Cydia themes. And that's how he made enough money to buy himself a Mac Mini. And when he joined us, we got him a spruced up, really nice computer. And he handles a lot of the back-end code. You just got to find the right people that are your people, wherever they are in the world. I had an experience where I moved around a lot when I was young, and I never found my people when I was in elementary school or middle school or high school. And then I got to Brown. And Brown to this day is my favorite place in the world. Even after that, visiting scholar year, I would come back every month or two, and I would crash on my friend Valentine's couch, just so I could be around this environment. Because Brown has something very special. If you go and you live in San Francisco, you'll find that you're around a lot of software engineers. In LA, you're around a lot of people who are doing e-commerce or marketing or acting. But Brown has this amazing melting pot. You have people studying, anthropology and religion and philosophy and industrial design and biology and all these different things. And it's people from all over the world, and Brown picks people for character traits. So you end up with a lot of people who are very good-hearted, a lot of people who are very tenacious, a lot of people who are intellectually curious. And it allows for, in my opinion, the best 4 years on anyone's life that you can have. And when I got to Brown, I would go to the Ratty every night, and I would have 3 dinners a night. I would take a plate, sit with 7 people I didn't know, take another plate, sit with another 7 people I didn't know, get a cup of tea, sit with another plate of 7 people I didn't know. And I got to know about like 50, 60% of my grade in the first 3 months. In the beginning of every other semester, I would do this again. So I made a lot of friends. I met Sam in the back of the Ratty a semester after I had graduated Brown, because we were sitting in the same place, and we've been working together for 4 years now. And so, ask people, what's your biggest struggle in life right now? What are your 3 top goals in life? What gives you energy? Like, just try to get to know people for no other reason than the fact that they're people, and therefore they're interesting. I learn a lot from books, but I learn even more from people, because they've had other life experiences that I have not. And so that's a really important key. I'll give another example of why hiring is so important, and it's actually Jan who's in the back right now. So Jan joined us at Speechify when he was 16 years old. He's now 17. He manages a team of 15 people. And the way that Jan joined Speechify is he's actually from Uruguay, which if you don't know where Uruguay is, it's south of Brazil. So it's very far away. And he saw an ad for Speechify on Instagram, and he was like, wow, this is awesome. So in high school, he started, helping us. And he re-optimized all of the keywords for our TikTok. He built this like 10-minute presentation on how to improve the product. Like, he did a lot of things, and he started sending me these emails that I never responded to. And then he started messaging the rest of the team. And then he went as far as messaging both my sisters on Instagram to try and get my attention. And finally, Alex messaged me and said, hey, respond to this guy. So I did, and we got on a call, and he was amazing. So eventually, we flew him out here too. And now he's about to come with us to London. And so the important thing is, back to that thing before, personal agency. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you're a high schooler. You can figure out a way to graduate early and go work for a company with a team that you think is cool. That's building something that you think is cool, which is democratizing access to education. One of the cool things is we're trying to solve literacy, but instead of doing it by building schools, we do it by writing software. And so the most important thing that we figured out in Speechify is just how to find and hire awesome people. And that's what you'll find from every company that is doing a meaningful thing in the world. The first thing you need to do is come up with a gigantic vision. The bigger, the better. It should ideally be scary. So 4 or 5 years ago when I started working on it, I would go to friends of mine who are really smart, and I'd explain what I had to say, and they tell me that they don't think it's a good idea. Again, these are people who I really, to this day, really admire, and they're still some of my best friends, and their opinion changed over time. And I'll tell you the story of when I was going to quit Speechify, and it was in 2017. And I've played around with Bitcoin and crypto for a long time, and I helped 2 of my friends raise ICOs, initial coin offerings. And one was for $60 million, the other was for $80 million, and I was like, man, if I go and do this, I know that I can do this, sure, do it. And I didn't know what to do. And around that time, Speechify had not as much retention and engagement in the usage as I wanted. And I had a huge dilemma. And we lived in this apartment that had 2 big windows, and I took this dry erase marker, and I did a huge pros cons list of what I should be doing with my life. And my conclusion was as follows. I think that to build a huge company, you should follow a technology that is progressing at a really rapid pace and is about to move from research to practicality. And my decision was that crypto was amazing, and it will change the world, but not now, because it's not ready. I still think it's not ready. And so I'd end up with $80 million in a bank account, but I wouldn't know what to do with it in a way that significantly improved the world now. The technology I did think was moving really fast and became practical now was artificial intelligence, specifically narrow AI, or deep learning. That is not take over the world AI. It's how to optimize one operation, like optical character recognition, taking a picture of a book and turning that physical text into digital text. Okay? And the change in behavior that I thought was most significant was what I saw in how people changed the behavior around listening. 10 years ago, it was very uncommon to listen to a podcast or an audiobook. And now everybody does it. And it was very uncommon to listen fast. And so one thing that happened to me is because I didn't speak English, I would listen to Harry Potter, and I'd recognize maybe 1 out of 10 words. And so I'd listen with 0.5x speed, and then 0.75, and then 1x, and then 1.25, and 1.5, and 2x, and 2.5, and 2.75, and 3x, and 3.5. I max out Audible. But it's just because I practiced. And everybody can practice. And today, there's double speed WhatsApp, double speed YouTube, double speed lecture capture, right? Every person who went through COVID, I bet you guys didn't listen to your lectures at 1x speed. If you did, please download Video Speed Controller and fix your behavior. And And everybody listens to podcasts at double speed. And so what happened to me is I built this tool and I added an automatic speed ramping algorithm that as I listened, it pushed me to listen faster. And so I became a very, very fast listener, which is why I can listen to so many audiobooks. I wake up in the morning, my AirPods go in, I brush my teeth, I eat breakfast, I listen. I drive, I listen. Even if it's 5 minutes, I'm listening at 3x speed, and I retain all of it because I practiced. Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile for the first time, and no one had ran a 4-minute mile before that. And the next year, like a dozen people ran the 4-minute mile. And it's because he broke it down into small chunks and he practiced. And so the same thing happened to me with audio and listening. And all my best friends now listen, including my dad, who's 65 years old, who wishes he had a mute button for me, and I wish I had a speed up button for him. And he started listening at maybe like 200 words per minute, and now he listens to everything at 400 words per minute. Just to give you context, someone with dyslexia typically will listen at about 140, read at about 140. Average American reads at 200 words per minute. Off the bat, most people with Speechify listen at 240. A month in, they're listening at 300, 350. I listen to 700, 800 words per minute to everything, and there's a ton of people, like thousands of people, who listen at like 900 words per minute, like way faster than I do. The next thing that I think is most important now, if you want to build a company after college, is to practice. So how do you practice? You just go and do it. Like, just go and build stuff. Like, go to RISD, find a designer, make something. Go to a hackathon, make something. Get together with your friends, make something. My best friend when I was in Brown was this guy called Valentin Perez, who actually is the founder of Startup at Brown. And every Saturday and Sunday, we would get together in the Ratty at 10 a.m. and we would do a mini hackathon. We worked from 10 a.m. to like 5 p.m. and we just build stuff. And that was the best way of practicing. I wasn't a computer science major, but I just looked at YouTube videos on how to make stuff. Actually, specifically, I took a course on Udemy called the Complete iOS Developer Course by Rob Percival. And then I did the same thing for learning how to do web design. And again, I am the worst computer science person ever because I misspell variables. Computer science is not hard. You don't need to have been coding since the age of 9 to do it well. You don't need to be good at math or science to do it. You just need to do it. Everybody here knows how to use Google Docs. It's the same thing. You just need to know which button to click. The other most important thing about learning how to build stuff, other than going and practicing, is figure out who you admire, and then go after them like a shark smelling blood. And so for me, a lot of the times it's biographies. Benjamin Franklin, the Wright brothers, Hamilton. Find people that you resonate with. And if they're human beings who are alive, figure out where they are. And so my senior year of college, I sent a bunch of messages to CEOs of companies that I thought really highly of. I just didn't get any of the jobs. And I was like, cool, well, I'm still today constantly messaging with people who I admire, but today it's people who invest in Speechify. And so, people who I spend most of my time with are founders of other apps that all of you guys use all the time. And so build that muscle of just reaching out to people and building relationships and building friendships. One thing that we did, Speechify is one of the highest performing advertisers on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. And at the beginning of 2020, I made a list of the top 100 best performing consumer subscription companies in the world. And I emailed every CEO and head of growth of all these companies. And I also Instagram messaged them and Facebook messaged them. And then I got them to go on a Zoom call with me. And then we do a weekly Zoom call. And then I'd be like, well, I'd love to hang out in person sometime. And they're like, well, anytime you want to come to Denmark or Israel or wherever, come by. And I was like, great, how about Sunday? And then I'd get on a flight and I'd show up at their office. And I'd sit behind them for 2 days and I'd see how they buy ads. And I did this with the founders of Robinhood, of Instagram, of Twitter, of Reflectly, of Lightrix, of Blinkist. And then I learned how to buy ads really well. And then I moved to LA and I made friends with a bunch of social media people. And I learned how they made YouTube videos and how they made Instagram content. And then we got really good at making content and buying ads. And so a lot of it is figuring out who you can learn from. And so one way that I learn is from books, but another way that I learn is from people. And so the important concept here is this idea of having a mental model of the universe in your brain that represents how the world works. How does the financial system work? How does politics work? How does immigration work? And you fit it all together. And when you learn a new piece of information, you don't intake it because someone told you. You intake it because it makes sense in relation to the other things that you already believe. The way to think about it as well is it's a tree of knowledge, and every person has this tree of knowledge in their brain. And the trunk of the tree is the information that you build when you are in elementary school, in high school, and from your parents, and the branches you kind of start to build in college. And every book you read is a bunch of leaves of information. And that information sticks on a branch if there is a branch there, but if there's no branch there, it floats away. So if I started explaining to you about Israeli history, unless you had some context, you will not remember any of it. But if I explain to you the first time and the second time and the third time, you're now building knowledge. And so you got to start by building the skeleton. And so this is, by the way, why it's often useful to reread books. I recommend doing it every couple of months, though. And And so the key is, find those people that you admire. And if you can work with them, that's the best for a couple of years. And if you can't, build relationships, be friends with them. And I want to talk a little bit about happiness. I feel like it took me maybe 3 years to get back to the same level of happiness that I had when I was a student at Brown. And the reason was that I lost the community. Especially if you work on your own thing and you're not plugged into working at LinkedIn or working at Google, you don't necessarily have that many people around you. And actually, this is something that a lot of people struggle with today because they're not necessarily working in an office and meeting new people. And so what exists here is really, really magical. And duplicating outside is not very easy. So I'll give you an example. I had a really good friend who was working with us, and he wanted to stay with us in Palo Alto. And I asked him, okay, well, what's your top 3 goals in life? And he told me that one of them was to find friends that he really loves spending time with. And I was like, well, give me a list of 100 people who you wish you were friends with. And they were a combination of people who won like really cool scholarships and were building cool things and had awesome websites from Twitter. And I put all those people into a joint Facebook Messenger thread. And I was like, hey, I know some of you, I don't know others. We have dinners on our deck every Friday. You're all invited. Here's a link to the RSVP. We're going to do 2 events. And about 60 people showed up, 30 for the first event, 30 for the second event. And he made a bunch of friends off of that event, but I made some of my best friends off of that event too. And so it's important to realize that in 2021, the world is very different. Number one, you should treat the airplane system like the subway system. I book most of my flights day of. I am very clever with my credit card points. And so I'm able to make friends no matter where they are in the world. And typically, I make friends with them over the internet first, from a cold Instagram message or a comment on YouTube or sending an email. And so just go on the internet, find the most awesome people, message them, develop relationships, and eventually you'll meet in person. And this is the best way, in my opinion, to start companies, to find your significant other even, and to find your best friends. And then and relationships are exponential. Your closest relationships are way more important than any other relationships. For me, it's my family. And then outside of that, it's your best friends, and then your friends, and then your acquaintances. And so really invest the time in developing those relationships with those amazing people, and find those awesome people and just drag them into your circle and build a relationship with them. And one of the ways to do that, by the way, with friends who are like your brothers or your sisters, is to use the word love. I love you. I love you, Sam. I love you, Jan. And that's something that people infrequently hear. And that's something I've been doing since high school, is the second that I feel, there's a great word in Tibetan called mudita. It's the feeling of well-being as a result of someone else's well-being or accomplishments. It's the opposite of Schadenfreude. And if you can hack your life to feel a tremendous amount of joy at someone else's success, you just multiply the joy that you're going to have in your life tremendously. And to me, that's the definition of love. It's when you feel that way about another person, but to a much more amplified degree than you would to another person. And if you tell someone else, I love you, brother, they're going to be surprised. Because some families even don't use the word love in them often. And so it's very magical, because really, above everything else, the thing most people want to be is they want to be loved. And that's something that is universally true of humans. So be the person who passes that to other people first, and you'll be amazed how frequently you get it back from the rest of the world. All right, final section is about happiness. And this is probably the most important one. So obviously, my first principle around happiness is to give as much love as you can, and you'll receive a lot in return. But also do it tactically, like make a list of the people who you think are awesome and go be friends with them. And just find a way to make that happen. Number 2 is taking care of your actual health in ways that are not obvious. I study renewable energy engineering. I'm obsessed with energy. I think energy is the coolest thing in the world. It turns out that the body is a science equation. Everything you eat either comes out as heat or is used up in energy or goes into the composition of your body. There was a time in 2018 where I had a surgery that made it so that I could not run, and I was not allowed to lift anything heavier than 10 pounds for about 10 weeks. And I was like, man, I'm going to turn into a blob. And so for the first time in my life, I started cutting, not eating caloric excess, eating a caloric, not surplus, but deficit. There you go. And I had read, whenever I want to learn about something, I just read all the books on the topic, and I'll read research PDFs. So I had done this for how to build muscle in the past, but this is the first time I found out about macros. So there's fat, carbs, and protein, and I found this thing called a DEXA scan, which tells you exactly how much muscle, fat, and bone there is in your body. And so I started graphing my physical well-being every 2 months and playing around with the numbers. And I found that by customizing the protein, fat, and carbs and how I exercised, I ended up unlocking how to have exactly the body that I wanted. And then I did the same thing for the rest of our team. And so there are a lot of things in life that we take prescribed, right? We listen to what society has to tell us. But really, just find the source, learn the tools to assess, and then play with it. And if you track it, it'll grow really fast. So part of the reason Speechify grows really fast, our Chrome extension is one of the fastest growing Chrome extensions in the history of the store. the iPhone app is the 4th highest grossing productivity app now in Apple. It's the #1 app in its category, is because we measure the growth every single week, and someone reports on it to the rest of the team. So it doesn't matter if it's what you want to do in music, or what you want to do in friendship, or what you want to do in fitness, or what you want to do in business. Track it and see how you can increase it over time. Actually, I'm going to do a cool segue that I think is cool. Maybe you guys will think it's cheesy, but I think it's cool. One of my favorite things in the world is music. I love writing. I'm obsessed with this play called Hamilton. And with The Greatest Showman, and with Ed Sheeran, and with Alec Benjamin, and with Eminem, I like good lyrics. And recently, we've been trying to figure out in Speechify, how do we evoke pathos, especially for people who have dyslexia, ADD, low vision, people who have disabilities who use our product, in our ads. And that's something that's a little bit difficult to do, and we haven't been successful in doing it, right? Even in the way that we approach ads, we're very performance-based. We'll make about 100 different pieces of creatives every week, and we'll test them as ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Twitter doesn't work for ads well, actually. And another 20 that we'll run on YouTube. And so I was like, well, how do I invoke pathos for these users? And I was like, well, one cool thing that I could do is I can write a song, because that's the thing that usually gets me. And so recently, we've been working on this song. I'm going to show it to you guys. And you guys can give me feedback of what you think about it. And you're the first people to hear it, because I just wrote it. But the cool thing I want to show you in this context is one thing that I found makes me really happy is taking my vast array of disparate interests and finding a way to include them in the main thing that I work in. So though I have a very ADD brain and I'm interested in all these different things, I made it a rule. I can't work on other companies. I can only work on Speechify. No board break, no cell armor, no starter pack, just Speechify. Okay. Well, I still have an interest in doing a bunch of different things, so what should I do? Well, I'm interested in traveling. Great. Hire people all over the world. I'm interested in music. Great. Use music to build ads for your company. I'm interested in video. Great. Figure out a way to incorporate into that thing. Figure out what your strengths are and just bake that into your job. And so I actually really, really, really enjoy my job, because I do only the things that I love, and I delegate all the things that I don't love. So when I was a student here, I wrote a bunch of patents, and actually made a YouTube video on how to file a patent, which is the first result you Google if you search how to file a provisional patent. But I hate writing patents. It's so much drudgery. It's designed by the same dude who invented the DMV. It's really, really bad, which is why I had to make a tutorial about it. So today, I don't write any of our patents. Somebody else does that, thank God. And though I really love the algorithmic side of coding, the syntax and the spelling really gets me. So other people run the spelling. I make sure to hire, to make sure there's money in the bank, and to set a really, really big vision. And sometimes I'll dive into small portions of product or ads or whatever else it might be. But figure out what are the things that give you energy, right? It might be coding, it might be designing, it might be talking to users, and then turn that into a superpower. All right, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to show you the song, and then I'm going to summarize the talk. Sound good? Let's see if I have it. Oh, we changed the audio system. Oh, we need to turn it on? All right, so the concept of the song is going to come up as an ad on YouTube, and it's going to be the interface for Google Docs, and you just see the lyrics as the song plays. Let's see if we can get it to work. I think it works. Great. And you know what? I'm going to sing it to you guys too. Okay, let's see. We recorded this 3 days ago. I never understood as a kid why the words in the book kept flipping and jumbling. While every other kid was in class just running through pages, I'm tripping and stumbling. How come every time while I'm trying to figure out a sentence, it feels like a math equation? At least with that, I got a calculator. Teacher tell me to hurry up because the class is waiting. Damn, anxiety rising. Book in my face, try to hide behind it. I don't want them to see that my eyes are crying. Say I gotta go to the bathroom, I lie about it. Either that or I pretend to read. Went home that night, couldn't get to sleep. Told my dad how I felt and I hoped that he wouldn't think less of me. That's when he said to me, I know how you feel and I wish you could see what I see in you. If you got nothing left to believe in, know that I believe in you. When the class turned gray, just know that a new day's peeking through. When the words on the page all turn into pain, don't be afraid, I'll read to you. Everything flipped when I learned how to read with my ears instead of my eyes. Got my headphones on while I listen to the words on the page. I'm wasting a second of time. Hit a roadblock when I got into econ class. College audio books for that. So I try to find a tool, but I can't find a thing. Now I'm failing school. Knew I couldn't never let it get to me. Gotta find another way to turn text to speech. So I learned how to code, how to debug JavaScript. Highlighting the words, they stop the flip. I'm listening fast, it's talking it. No limit on me, all confidence. But on days when it hurts and I'm insecure, I sit with myself and I write these words. I know how you feel and I wish you could see what I see in you. If you got nothing left to believe in, know that I believe in you. When the clouds turn gray, just know that a new day's peeking through. When the words on the page all turn into pain, don't be afraid, I'll read to you. Ironic how I couldn't read books and the books all read to me. Instead of just skimming pages, we're scanning pages and we listen back easily. So if you get bored and resort to procrastination, no retention when you read the lines. Chrome extension for the peace of mind, cause anything you wanna read, you can speechify it. Playing field, have to level it out. Everybody learns different, it's evident now. One skill should never be the limit on a kid's potential. Shouldn't force it to fit the stencil. 20 years later, my son felt that. The whole class laughed at the fact he was struggling. I was hugging him, afraid that I can't always be next to him. That's when I said to him, I know how you feel and I wish you could see what I see in you. If you got nothing left to believe in, know that I believe in you. If the clouds turn gray, just know that a new day's peeking through. When the words on the page all turn into pain, don't be afraid, I'll read to you. I'll read to you. So there's 2 points there. Number one, doesn't matter what you're doing. Figure out things that you enjoy doing and just like drag them into it no matter what it is. So, I like building things. And I was a student at Brown. And when you're a student at Brown, you're supposed to learn. You're not necessarily supposed to be building companies. But I was like, well, I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna go visit RISD and Stanford and Harvard and MIT, and I'm gonna use their resources to build stuff. And I'm gonna treat myself like I'm a varsity athlete. I had friends when I was in college who were like on the crew team and studying like biomaterials at the same time. And they would go to classes, and then after classes, they would go to practice. And in the weekends, they'd go on regattas or games. And I was like, damn, I'm not gonna let them outwork me. So I was, in classes, and then after school, I would code stuff or build stuff. And then on the weekends, I go to hackathons or go to pitch competitions. I found a way to both be a student and do other stuff that I was interested in at the same time. And, time to go to the gym. If you're gonna dedicate your life to doing one thing, find ways of honing the other skills that you enjoy and include them in that thing. So like, I really like making friends. So I use that to hire. And I really like music, so I use that to build ads. And I really like talking to people. So in the beginning of Speechify, I would go every day to a college campus, whether it was here or Berkeley or Stanford or UCSF, and I would get poor victims to sit and test my app for me. And by the way, that was probably the hardest thing I had to do while building Speechify because the app was very bad for a long period of time, especially when I was the main developer. And so people would use it, and in front of my eyes, it would break. And it's like people telling me your baby is ugly. So I said Justin to talk to them instead of me. And that way, I wasn't heartbroken every single day. So what's like the overarching conclusion, and then I'll open it up to questions. Number one, be bold. Learn to do bold things, not to endure suffering. Number two, find a way to handle your fears. So whether it be fear of not taking a job after graduation because you're afraid that people will make fun of your mom that you're not working at Google, or fear of like singing a song in front of people. Like before this, I was like, well, what's the negative things that can happen? Like somehow they got their hands on some tomatoes and they're gonna throw it my way. Like literally write out what the fears are and adjust them that way. Choose when to go ham. Is it when someone steals your laptop? Is it when you're about to make the decision of what you're gonna spend the rest of your life on? Or is it when you're gonna do like pull an all-nighter before a midterm? There is always ways to circumnavigate an obstacle in a human-ran system by finding the person at the top of the governance structure and asking for a special exception. You can do things that other people consider impossible. Give it enough time. And whenever you're faced with option A and option B, there's always option C and D that are harder to get. Most people don't even realize they're options, and they take luck. But often it's worthwhile to go ham to try and get them. And the way to do all this reasoning, how to figure out about fear, how to make the right decisions, when to go ham, is to build a mental model of the universe. It's like a map, like Google Maps. Like, sometimes you zoom into a place and it's really pixelated. Sometimes you zoom into a place and it's really fleshed out. Pick the areas in your life where you want to really flesh it out and do that. Read books about it, talk to strangers about it, and do random things that other people would not do. Have a crazy bias towards action. Or think about it as building your tree of knowledge. First build the base, then build the branches, then build the leaves. And that's how you make good decisions over time. And just don't take, the status quo for granted. Read, write, AQ is a lot more important than IQ or EQ. All of you guys should try to pick up how to code. It's really useful in 2021, and I promise you I had a harder time learning how to do it than you will. And most important, after, by the way, listen to audiobooks. Like, number one hack in life is listening to audiobooks. Download Audible, download Speechify, both the iPhone app and the Chrome extension. Like, it fundamentally changed my life. I'm sure it'll change yours as well. But really, most importantly, is find a way to give love to other people before they give love to you. And you'll find that it has the biggest, at least for me, it had the biggest impact on my happiness and quality of life. Thank you guys for listening. Happy to answer questions. Yes?
Hi. What are the books that have helped you succeed or changed your mindset the most?
Yes, so great question. There's way too many to list, so I'll give you a high level, and if you have a specific question, I'll curate the list to you. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss is amazing at learning how to build systems and how to hire. When you read the first chapter, he sounds like a jerk, but stick through it. It's a really, really good book.
What is it called?
The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I highly recommend Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. The most important conclusion there is in life there's it's like a bunch of rivers that flow into each other. There's ends, final ends, and most final ends. And it just has a lot of really important philosophy. The next one is How to Win Friends by Dale Carnegie. Unbelievably good books. By the way, the Tim Ferriss book also has a list of comfort challenges that you can do in them to lower your inhibition around other people. Highly recommend doing those. On the fantasy side, there's an amazing book called The Way of Kings. The main character, his name is Kaladin, and he's the best character I've ever come across in any book. A similar book is called Red Rising. Sci-fi-wise, I'd highly recommend Demon. Demon is in the computer virus, not Demon is in the mythical entity, as well as any book by Daniel Suarez. The Lean Startup is a really good manual for how to build, and then biographies. So I love Arnold Schwarzenegger's biographies, Teddy Roosevelt's biographies, Benjamin Franklin's biography. That's probably the place I learn the most. But if you have a specific question, I can tailor the books to you.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. All right, number one and then number two.
Hi, I'm Yap. Thanks for your speech. I
Hi,
was
Yap.
wondering why you think it's important to give people love before they give love to you.
If they give it to you first, great. It's not important that you be the first one. If they gave it to you first, it's a very positive indication on that person. It already shows that they're someone who's worthwhile investing time in. The reason it's important to give people love first is because most people have a blocker to doing so. And so I think that some people say, I read once a sentence, your success in life can be measured by the number of difficult conversations you're willing to have, which I agree with. But I think that a better sentence is your success in life can be measured by the number of conversations you finish with I love you. At least for me, the quality of my interpersonal relationships are the things that leads the most to an increase in my happiness. And the word that we use as a definition for the quality of your interpersonal relationships generally is the word love. And so it's a way to vastly accelerate the rate at which you build those relationships. And so if you say it first, you build those relationships more faster than other people do. As a result of building more relationships, you'll end up with more high quality relationships over time.
For the talk. My name's Alejandro. My question is, do you think everyone should be an entrepreneur?
No. Okay, so the word entrepreneurship comes from a Latin root, meaning to elevate economic resources from an area of low yield to an area of high yield. Effectively, you're creating value where there was none before. One of my favorite essays about this is called On Wealth by Emerson, and he describes how Thomas Savery invented the steam engine. And it used to be a pile of scrap metal on the floor of his garage, and he applied his thought to matter, rearranged it in a certain way, and created something that was greater than the sum of its parts. And then you multiply it times 1,000, times 1,000,000, times 100 million, and now you can pump water out of wells, you can create electricity, you can have trains, etc. The difference between an entrepreneur and a businessman is really good at doing arbitrage. He buys peaches in the village, he brings them to the city, he sells the peaches, it costs $3 to make the peaches in the village, and they cost $6 in the village because they're higher quality. An entrepreneur makes a peach smoothie and sells you that. But it comes with a lot of risk. So you guys are probably familiar with the term hedge funds, right? A hedge fund is like a mutual fund, but it deals with more risk. So hedging is a function of how to deal with risk. I have an extremely high risk tolerance. I'm the type of person where if I want to learn something new, I throw myself in the end of the pool and I figure out how to swim. And I'm okay with taking the risk. And it's because I'm really, really good at high pressure situations. It's one of the benefits of having ADD. But a lot of people get really stressed by that. And that's not how they want their life to be. And they are not people who enjoy being in super high risk situations. And so if that's you, there's no reason to be an entrepreneur. I think today, entrepreneurship is heroized to a degree that is completely unnecessary. You need everybody, right? You need people who just love solving hard problems and are software engineers. You need people who are going to fix the plumbing. You need people who are going to like help us put the chairs here. You need people who are going to be, I never had an interest in being a doctor because I love scale, I love growth. And I was like, I don't want to impact one person's life at a time. I do have a huge interest in biotechnology. And so I took a lot of medical classes because I want to figure out how to invent things that are used in medicine. And even when I traveled, I spent a bunch of time in South Africa when I was a student, I would go to hospitals and shadow surgeons to see how they use tools so I could build more tools for them. But I didn't need to be the entrepreneur, right? So if you're a founder, your number one role is to learn. You learn how to code, you learn how to design, you learn how to talk to users, you learn how to fundraise, you learn how to hire. As a CEO, you have 3 roles. Make sure there's enough money in the bank, set a very big vision, and hire. But what if that's not what you want to spend your time on? What if you want to spend your time doing art? What if you want to spend your time solving hard problems? What if being the person at the front, fighting off all the people that don't believe you is not what you want to do with your life? Well, being an entrepreneur is probably not the path. Find the path that allows you to optimize and do the things that gives you energy. Now, then the question is, how do you define the term entrepreneur? So the term entrepreneur that we're using right now is more company founder. But if you define the term entrepreneur to elevate economic resources from an area of low yield to an area of high yield, creating value, to me, creating value is like magic. It's the coolest thing that we can do. And so I think that everybody should seek to create value. So everybody should want to create value, but being the person that starts the company is not necessarily the most effective way to do that for everybody. Does that make sense? Cool. Yes? Microphone inbound.
Hi, Cliff. Appreciate you sharing your story. My name is Smile. So
Your name is Smile?
Yeah, pronounced Smile, but spelled differently.
Wow.
I'm originally from Kazakhstan, so I'm an international student here. But my question is regarding hiring people. So you mentioned, you need to hire people that are smarter than you, right, for your startup. So my question is about at the very early stages when you're getting started, right? So say pre-seed,
Yep.
you're still trying to convince people of your vision. So how do you deal with that? It's kind of like a chicken and egg problem, right? Where you're trying to raise funding and then also hire people. So how do you deal with that?
Great question.
Your story,
Yep. All right. So I call this the babysitter system for management. It's very easy to do when you're in college, right? There's 6,000 undergrads at Brown, 2,000 grads. There's a bunch of people who are studying engineering. There are a bunch of people doing design. And a lot of people who build stuff before they even got here. You go, hey, Smile. I know you're good at building stuff. I'm building this cool thing, and I get you excited about the thing. Initially, I built a attachable brake for longboards and skateboards because somebody crashed on my longboard, and so I designed a thing to make it better. And so I went down to RISD and I talked to a bunch of people who did industrial design. And I went to Bears and Holly. This is the first day of school, and I sat in Hazeltine's place, and I was like, "Yo, every person who came in, hi, what's your name? I'm Cliff. Nice to meet you. Hey, I'm trying to build this." I showed them a sketch. What should I do? And they give me advice. And I was like, "Amazing. Sounds like you're really knowledgeable. Would you want to help me build it?" And they're like, "No, I have other things going on." I was like, "Oh, no worries. Well, can I get your number? I'd love to see some more advice." Most people are like, "Sure. Hey, can you give me the phone numbers of 2 people who you think would be interested in helping me with this?" And they would. And so the 14th person did not, it wasn't the right one. But the 15th person gave me the phone number of a person who did a dual degree between Brown and RISD and helped me build the first CAD model for that board brake. And he just did it because it gave him energy. And then I found someone at MIT who helped me and someone at Stanford who helped me and all over the place. And the guy at Stanford, he had done one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns at the time, and he was really good at manufacturing. And I just sent him an email, we started talking, we got on a phone call, and then next time I was in California, I just went by and I visited him. When it comes to engineering, hackathons are a great place to do this because people have signed up to go work on the thing. And my problem was I go to hackathons and we do really well. And then after the hackathon, no work would get done because people went back to their place and I didn't know how to code. And that's why I was like, there's no way I'm not learning how. I have to learn how to code because otherwise the steam will go away. And so if you're going to be a founder in 2021, you don't need to be an amazing developer, but ideally you know how to code. So that even if nobody else is there, you can keep that. Remember that truck that we talked about driving through the safari? Even if everybody quit, Speechify will still continue. Because if I needed to, I would be the developer. And so what happened with Speechify is, there was a winter break. Everybody had gone home. I was at Brown, snow outside. I was wearing 3 sweatshirts because I didn't want to have a high electricity bill. And my goal for myself is every single day I had to spend 5 hours in Xcode coding, which to me took a lot of energy away from me. And if I didn't do that, I had to message 6 friends that I informed that this was my goal. And I had to go and do 300 push-ups and 200 pull-ups before 10 a.m. that day. Plus, I'd need to run 10 miles on Sunday. If any of the days in the week I missed this goal. And so I got very good at running. But force yourself to do the things that you don't enjoy doing until you have the privilege not to. And then also, so then once you find the people who are interested, be like, hey, great, let's get together at 5 p.m. on Tuesday at this place. And we're like, sure. They show up. You come with like water bottles, whatever you need to supply. And you sit. It doesn't matter what you do on your computer, as long as they're working on their computer. You can be on Google Docs, you could be designing, you could be learning how to code. But if you sit with them, they'll work with you. The second you're gone, they'll stop working. So get a group together, like 3 people, and work for 5 hours a day in the Ratty on the weekend. And that's how you start. And little by little, you'll get to the point where it starts to make sense and move deeper. You reminded me of a good story I'm going to tell you guys. One of the inflection points for me with Speechify is Richard Branson was going to give a talk in Boston at the Forbes 30 Under 30 conference. And Richard Branson is dyslexic, and I'd read his biography twice, and I really wanted to meet Richard Branson. And I was like, I got to go to this conference. But I didn't have a ticket, and the ticket was $600. So I started messaging a bunch of friends, trying to figure out if I could get a ticket. I found a sponsor, and I messaged the sponsor. I was like, hey, I'm a student, but they gave me a free ticket. I went to Boston. I slept on a friend's floor. Really excited. It's 3 a.m. the night before. Richard Branson's about to speak. And I look at where the event is, and I realize it's a VIP-only event, and I have a normal ticket. And I was like, God damn it. I was like, what do I do? So I opened my computer, and I edited the HTML of the Forbes Under 30 website to make it look like I was on Forbes 30 Under 30. And then I set it to mobile, took a picture, put it on my phone, and my plan was to walk up to the security the day of and tell them, no, I'm on the list. So they let me in. So I went there that day, and there was like 100 people in the line. Even if I had a VIP ticket, I couldn't have gotten in. This is like in this building in Boston. So I started like doing laps around the building, like trying to see if there's parkour, if there's a door that I could get into. And I found a door to the basement, and I went up the service elevator, and I got to the roof. And the roof, I moved this light, stepped through the thing of the light, put it back, and went down this rickety staircase and sat not in the VIP section, but in the speaker section, next to Richard Branson, Ray Dalio, and the editor of Forbes. So we started to have a conversation. Turns out the editor of Forbes is dyslexic. And when he went up to interview Richard Branson, he was like, yeah, like send us questions on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So I made 3 Twitter accounts, and from all of them I tweeted them about dyslexia. And you're like, wow, there's a lot of questions about dyslexia today. And then Richard Branson stepped off the stage. I made a beeline. He's like still walking out, couldn't get his attention, but like he pointed at his secretary and had her talk to me. I gave her all my information, and that's it. She never messaged me back. And so I found her email on the internet. I emailed her, no success. 2 years later, Richard Branson was giving another talk. Once again, I snuck in by initially climbing into the roof and then going to the back. Once again, I did not succeed. 4 years later, Richard Branson and I met through another means, and he became an investor in Speechify and became very good friends. This happened to me a lot with the founder of Twitter. It happened to me with the founder of Instagram. It happened to me with the founder of Robinhood. Like over and over and over again, if you set yourself a goal, it doesn't matter how long the goal takes. If you believe that you can do anything you set your mind to, even things that other people consider impossible, give it enough time, you're always going to succeed in doing the thing. And so, a week later, or a month later, I opened up my phone, and I had 100 messages that were unread on email and on Facebook and Instagram. Turned out I was on the Forbes list. I was like, how is it possible that I'm on the Forbes list? And it was because I sat next to that editor of Forbes when I went to this conference. And after that, it became a little bit easier because I don't know what he was thinking putting me on that list because Speechify was not at all credible at the time. Like we had, I don't know, a couple of thousand users. But it helped give me credibility that, in my opinion, I did not deserve at the time. And so there's a concept of credibility indicators. And if you can find some credibility indicators, that's pretty good. Like, in my opinion, it's not that big of a deal being the #1 app in your category. And like, it's great. Like, it's amazing in your category in the App Store. The more exciting thing is that, a year ago, people were listening to about 188 million words per month on Speechify. Today, they listen to more than 3 billion words per month on Speechify. Like, this is like hundreds of thousands of books. Like, that's really the stat people should say, but that means nothing to you. But it is meaningful that it's the #1 app in a category. So, man, invent your own list and make yourself the person. Like, it doesn't matter. So, like, the fact that you go to Brown is enough. So, use the babysitter system for management and find ways of building credibility indicators along the way. And then make it so that working with you is the funnest experience these people have ever had. It's like the most effective they've ever been. Like if they have distractions, like your #1, as CEO, like 50% of your job is being mom. You're the one who's in charge of like there needs to be food, there needs to be electricity, there needs to be Wi-Fi, there needs to be a house. You book people flights. Like you take care of people like they are your family. And that's it. Cool.
So that's the story of like 30, like before you made it to the list, you went to the summit.
Yes, but you don't need to go to the summit to make it on the list. You don't need to go to the summit to make it on the list. Someone just needs to, I guess, nominate you. But it's a random example of put yourself in places that are way above your league somehow.
No, actually, I'm also on 30, but like for the custom list.
Ah, there you go. For which one?
Custom list.
No way. All right. One second. What are you in the Kazakhstan list on Forbes 30 under 34?
For finance.
And is that the thing that you are working on now?
That's what I've been working on my gap year, so I did gap year before I came here. And then, but I also have a startup that I'm working on. So.
Got it. Amazing.
Hey, my name's Joe Lillard, and I was wondering, you talk a lot about hiring
Yeah.
and how that's like one of your main jobs now. What's your secret to hiring? Everyone has one. So.
Oh, I have many. Well, the number one secret to hiring, to fundraising, is make friends. This is the most important one. So that's the most important one, but that works when I'm doing like the sourcing, but we have like a huge sourcing system where we'll interview like 600 people a month. My secret to hiring is hiring internationally. So, surprise, not all the smart people in the world live in the Bay Area. It's amazing. Kazakhstan, they live in Ukraine, they live in China, they live in Indonesia. Like, it doesn't matter where they are in the world. There's smart people everywhere. And sometimes they don't have those credibility indicators. They didn't win the #1 math thing. They didn't have a job at Google before, but they're still freaking amazing. So, when Jan messaged me and finally I responded, I came up with a task for him to do. And he did it. And I was like, damn. And then he did another one, and another one, and another one. Justin came up to me after a talk I gave, 3 years ago? 2017. And he told me, it doesn't matter what, I'll sleep on the floor, I'll sweep the floor, just let me work with you guys. And I was like, okay, what can you do? He couldn't do anything at the time, I'm sorry. And I was like, okay, well, the fire is there, what can I have him do? I was like, all right, I want you to go to Engine 9 and Engine 90 and any other classes you can, figure out what all the readings are from those classes and put them in a repository so we can preload them on Speechify for those students, and then go in those classes and present about it. And you know what? I gave them that task to like 15 other people before who told me they wanted to work with us, and none of them did it because it's actually very hard to do, and Justin went and did it. And I was like, there you go, man. So then we hired him, and he came to intern at Speechify, and he did a lot of our early design. And so if I'm hiring the person, I give them a small task to do, and if they crush it, I give them another one, and then it gets to the point where I can't afford not to hire them. And then I'll move heaven and earth to make sure that I can hire them. That's when it's like, interpersonal. And that story with Simon is the same thing. Like, he was messaging me from Bulgaria. At this point, we've gotten people, multiple O1 visas, TN visas, J1 visas, green cards. We've become experts in immigration. And it's because you find these awesome people no matter where they are. And usually we work remotely, but sometimes we bring people in person with us. And it's because I give people the opportunity to shine. And so, the definition is these diamonds in the rough, like people who, you just give them the opportunity. And if you give them the opportunity, they'll crush it. But you can give the opportunity to 100 people, and if 2 of them shine, that's fine. Because you didn't lose anything by giving the opportunity to the other.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. You're amazing at storytelling. It's awesome. But you talk about how, you have so many goals, you're grinding, you keep going, and I find in my personal experience, if you're grinding so much, it's you almost don't have the time to look back at the fruits of all your hard work, and it's you get lost in that. So how do you find joy in what you do and appreciate what you've done and I don't know, enjoy the process?
Yeah. So first of all, you use the word grinding. I wouldn't say that I'm grinding. Grinding implies that you do something that is against the current. I'm riding the wave. So by the way, another concept for startups is come up with the biggest vision that you can, but not for something that is here, something that is coming. Like if in football you don't run to where the ball is, you go to where the ball is going. And so you need to be, in investing, to say the same thing. It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. And so if you're working on a startup like Speechify, you don't know when deep learning will make some gigantic leap. So I'm just a surfer, I'm in the water, I'm swimming, I'm waiting, and the wave comes, I'm just riding the wave. And so the first thing I do is when I come up with an idea that I'm really excited about, I just go ham, immediately. I will do I came up with a song 2 weeks ago, and I found a guy who I thought was a really good musician, who was a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, can you help me with the song? And we just we did 4 Zoom calls where he, we sat, babysitting system management, except I was the one being babysat because I knew that if I forced myself to do it by myself, it wouldn't happen. And then I flew to Las Vegas to record the song in the studio. And then, I made a couple of versions, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna give a talk. You know what? I'm gonna sing the song because I'm excited about it right now. So I'm riding the wave that I'm already excited about. And then the key is, all right, well, when you're in between waves, what do you do? So here's what you do in between the waves. Fitness, music, friends, but you never stop working. You might work a little bit less, but you keep going. Because again, you don't make progress like this. You make progress like this, and then you slam into a brick wall, and you crumble. And you go backwards, and you slam into the brick wall again. And you just do that over and over for years until you break through, and then you keep running again. It's like Mario. And that's really the key. And the other key is work on something you genuinely care about. That if you did not do it, nobody else would, and the world needs it. So for me, people are like, I am a computer that can talk to you. No one's gonna, consume all their information that way. And I was like, well, man, you should see how many words I've listened to that way. Actually, without that, I wouldn't be a student. So I had an internal belief in text-to-speech that other people did not have. And so find, Peter Thiel has a question. What is one thing that you believe that other people that you consider smart don't? Find the answer to that thing. And then a lot of times people, they'll go and build a company because something is exciting, right? They'll go and do crypto because crypto is on the rise. I don't think that's the way to build a company. Find the thing that you're vulnerable about, the thing that you need solved, and invest the time in solving that. And you'll find that you never run out of energy to work on that thing. It might be annoying because you don't get the usage or the engagement that you want from users, but no one will ever be able to convince you that that thing does not make sense. So no one could ever convince me that text-to-speech is not the best way to consume information. I just needed to convince them that I built software that's good enough that you'd be addicted to it and that other people would download it and pay for it. You remind me of one thing. By the way, I got to make a plug. Everybody, I have a sister. Her name is Alex Weitzman. She has an app called Amori, which is a dating app that she just launched, dating and socializing. It uses audio chat room interfaces for colleges and cities. And they're right now doing a survey to find your love at Brown. So go to @amori.app on Instagram, and you can be added to the survey and find an awesome partner or friend. Small tidbit. Sorry. Any other questions? Yes, in the back. Oh, yes, you first and then there.
Hi, that's really funny. I'm Izzy. I'm working on Alex's launch.
No way.
I just wanted to ask, I feel like the hardest part of a lot of things is starting.
Yes.
So I was wondering, how would you recommend to start before you find the waves?
Great question. How do you start before you find the waves? Practice. Find the ways to practice. So the best way is to go to hackathons. So, there's a place called Hackathon Hackers on the internet. There's a bunch of different groups, and every school has one. Brown has one. But I would literally go to 4 or 5 hackathons a semester when I was a student, and it's 24 or 48 hours, and you just build stuff. So just go, and you'll make friends who like to build stuff. You'll learn how to build stuff, and usually it's mainly coding stuff, but I built Board Break, which is a 3D printed skateboard break at a hackathon. And then, block out time ahead of time. Like a varsity athlete, they go to practice, they go to games, do the same thing, but for the thing that you want to work on. And every time you have an idea, you're excited, go do it. That guy wrote a longboard. I built a thing for longboards. I knew it was not going to change the world, but it was a really good thing to practice on. And with time, by the way, another trick for hiring is everybody wants to work on something that's growing fast. You'd be amazed. It could be peanut butter, but if it's growing fast, everybody wants to work on it. And so work on something, and sometimes you get lightning in a bottle. And when you get lightning in the bottle, you'll get more excited, everybody else will get more excited, and you'll realize it has a much bigger vision than what you initially thought about. Initially, I was like, yeah, text-to-speech or textbooks. And everyone's like, that's a cute idea, kid. And I was like, well, actually, I really need this. But now whenever I talk to people, wow, you're democratizing access to education, solving literacy with software. You're building an operating system for knowledge acquisition, an auditory operating system. Yeah, it's true. We are building a platform. It's a huge vision. It's going to be a $100 billion company. But it started in something small. I personally love building things that give utility immediately. So Amori has a clear utility, Speechify has a clear utility, but let's say you're building something like Snapchat. Snapchat, it's tricky for me because there's an element of luck there. And so one of the criteria I had when I was building stuff is I didn't want to make money off of ads. I wanted to make money off of users paying me directly. And I wanted to build a simple app or website. And my good archetypes were Airbnb and Uber because I knew what the value they were delivering was. And I had a clear idea of how those startups would scale into being $100 billion companies. So how do you start? Just practice. And always do it with other people. Even in the gym, I hate working out by myself. I love working out with other people. So whenever I make a friend and I want to be closer friends with them, I'll be like, hey, what's your number? Great. Do you want to work out at 5 p.m. on Tuesday? You'd be surprised. Everybody's down to work out. Everybody wants to be fit. So I just get them to come to the gym with me, and then I work out with them, and that's amazing. So do the same thing for this. So get on the listserv for Startup at Brown and for Brown EP, and find other people who want to build stuff. Meet the other people here, and go build stuff for them. Cool. We had a question in the back, I think. I'll repeat the question, tell me if I got it right. You described, Cliff, a lot of conditions that society might tell you shouldn't be proud of, like dyslexia or ADD or other things, or anxiety or depression. How do you deal with that in a way where you can own it? Is that the question? Great. 1 second, I got to give you give me a sec to think. Okay. There's a really important idea, which is you cannot be jealous of someone or envious of someone without putting yourself 100% in their shoes. So even if you want to be Richard Branson, you got to be like, well, you know, I need to have his family. I need to have his addictions. I need to have, not that he has addictions or anything, I'm giving it as an example. I want to be Bill Gates. Well, you know, all the things that he had to deal with. And you don't know what's in people's brains. You know, I have friends who hundreds of millions of people admire. And sometimes, like, their lives are really tough. And they have, like, demons inside that nobody knows about. And so it's very dangerous to play that game. And so you shouldn't switch lives with anybody unless you're willing to take on everything. You can't be jealous of just one thing. And when you have learning differences or disabilities, whatever you want to call it, it's a mixed bag. Like, you get some good things and some bad things. So let's talk about dyslexia. About 17% of the population has dyslexia, 5% are diagnosed. 50% of people who are incarcerated have dyslexia in the United States, and 40% of billionaires have dyslexia. So it's the type of thing where you're 9 years old and you fail at the one thing you're supposed to do over and over and over again. Either you check out of school, you say, hey, this is not for me, you go down a dark path, or you develop this crazy resiliency and the belief that you can do anything and that it's okay to fail. Now, I was very lucky. I had unconditional love from my parents, from my siblings, from some of my friends, and it gave me a platform that I knew I could not go below. By the way, another reason to give love to other people is even if you don't have that naturally from your nuclear family, if you just like go around giving love, suddenly you'll see you have that platform from other people. Right? When I did that exercise, what would happen if I failed? What if my parents didn't want me to live at home? There's so many people that I gave love to and that I was immediately there to support when they had a tough time that I knew that I had like 100 couches I could crash on if I so desired. ADD is the same thing. You know, earlier today I talked about how, you know, I get really distracted and everybody here who works with me knows that very well. But I also said that, you know, if you are under high stress, that's a very good, ADD is a very good attribute to have there. There's a book called Percy Jackson. It's like a middle schooler book. And Percy Jackson, you know, he sucks at everything. He's bad at school, he's bad at this, he's bad at that. And they say, yeah, no, he's dyslexic. It's because his brain is wired to read ancient Greek. He's like a demigod. And he has ADD because he's like ready to like fight and like see the other distractions in the field. So like everything has a downside and an upside. So people with dyslexia, you know, reading a sentence takes me as much energy and brain power as most people take to do a long division equation in their head. Is that a really big limitation around that? And the way dyslexia works is there's this thing called mini columns in the brain. For people with dyslexia, they're very long and they're far apart. For people with autism, they're very short and close by, and normal people have normal ones. And so people with autism are very good at minutia, small things. People with dyslexia, you know, they're not good at like small details, but they're excellent at big thinking, connecting overall concepts, etc. So George Washington was dyslexic. You know, a lot of actors are dyslexic. A lot of people at NASA are dyslexic, 30% of MIT. And so you just got to double down on the strength while still supporting and backing down the weaknesses. So, you know, let's say that you're someone who has depression. You know how to empathize with people who are in that state as well. And so there's a lot of magic that you can give to the world as a result of being in that state, you know? I'm very fortunate to work on a thing that is really meaningful to me because I'm helping people who are in exactly the same position that I was before. And again, like 20% of our users have dyslexia, ADD, low vision, concussion, autism, second language learners. And 80% are not. They're professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, people in the military, what have you. A bunch of things, including the phone, were invented for people with disabilities and then got extrapolated from the normal population. And so figure out what is the magic that you have the opportunity to give to the world as a result of your past experience, and then double down on that. And then you'll see that in the end, it ends up benefiting everybody else. Now, there is a question of, do you talk about your disability to other people? And so when I was a student, I made a YouTube channel called Beat Dyslexia. And I called it Beat Dyslexia instead of posting it to the Cliff Weitzman YouTube channel because I didn't want potential employers to know I had dyslexia. And to that YouTube channel, I uploaded a video called How to Text to Speech Mac Free. And that video to this day is the first result you get when you search how to text to speech on Mac Free. And that video got like 200,000 views when I was like 19, 20 years old. And I got 400 comments of people saying, I can't believe it, my fourth grader is reading by herself. Thank you, I'm crying. And I was like, damn. And when I started to think, what do I want to spend my life on? I was like, that, you know, it works for me, but here's evidence that it works for other people too. And that was very meaningful. And putting myself out there in that way was one of the reasons why I ended up starting Speechify. And so it's very, very important to put yourself out there in that regard. Now, you can mitigate the risk by not including your name on things you put publicly, or like, you know, don't put it on your LinkedIn, but like tell it to people who you trust. So if people show you love initially, those are probably good people to show that trust to. And you can judge people, you know, on a case-by-case basis. So I think that's what I do. Now, I have been fortunate to get to the place with reading where I feel like I'm very well read, and therefore I don't feel a lot of self-consciousness around being dyslexic. And so as part of that, one of my responsibilities is to share the fact that I'm dyslexic with other people so that's public. Same thing from my experience with doing computer science. So see what you can do to mitigate your challenges. And shame is a really important concept. There's a really cool exercise called a shame circle where you get together with a bunch of friends and you say something you're ashamed of. And shame gets its power from a thing that you don't share with others. So if you share it, you'll see that it loses a lot of its power over you. And most people who are good people will not judge you for it. They'll judge you for the whole person, not just for that one thing. That's a lot of rambling, but that's my thought on that topic. You got it? Yeah, up here.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for coming today. Just one question, and that was, how did you decide to split ownership amongst your co-founders in Speechify?
So I don't have co-founders, and partly it's because it's challenging to have multiple chefs in the kitchen. So 2 of my best friends when I was at Brown are people who I would have loved to start a company with. My brother is someone I would have loved to start a company with. But I foresaw that there would be challenges if I did that. And there's a great sentence which is, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team. And I wanted to go really far. But in those early days, I had very high conviction around Speechify in a way that other people didn't. And I knew that I could build the first product by myself, so I'm just going to do that. If I was to build a company with other people, here's what I would do. I get everybody in a room. Let's say there's 5 of us, okay? Figure out roughly what you want the valuation of whatever it is to be. And each person gets a set amount of equity in that thing. And then you vest the equity. Typically, equity vests over 4 years with a 1-year cliff. Vested over 3 years, like full commitment. And if you leave at any point, you don't get the equity. That's how startups work in general. And that way, the risk is gone. Like as long as that person is there for the 3 years, they deserve it. Now, there's going to be a system for how people get fired if they can't pull their weight. And equity is also only something that you give to people who are full-time, full commitment. So if you're part-time and not full commitment, you can't have equity. The second that you are full-time, you can have equity. And so that's when the clock starts ticking. So, with Speechify, there was a bunch of people who could have started it with me, who I tried to get to start it with me, but they were unwilling to skip their summer internship to come work on it with me. So it didn't work. There are people who worked for us but left. So it didn't work. And so, in the beginning, do it as a function of time that people are willing to invest it over a set period of time. And there's a lot more nuance to it. If you're further down the line, let's say you've raised some money, then there's a value to the equity. And then it becomes a lot easier. So what I highly recommend is, have like founding engineer or founding this. So it's not the same level as a co-founder, but close. And you go, okay, what is the amount that you'd make in another job? Let's say it's $150,000 a year. You go, cool, I have $200K. So I can pay you, $40,000 a year in cash. And then I need to make up the rest, $110K in terms of equity. And the value of the company today is $1 million, according to an external investor. So you're going to get that amount of equity. So you can do it via math.
Thank you.
You got it? Any more questions before we wrap up? We can take like 2 or 3 more. All right, last chance. 3? Yeah, in the back. What's something that I know now that I wish I knew as an undergrad? How to count macros. Download MyFitnessPal. Shameless plug. Let's see if I have a more serious one. Well, the most impactful thing in my life was listening to audiobooks. Luckily, it was something that I had done for a long time. So if I didn't do that, I highly recommend other people do that. I didn't realize how awesome it is to not work in an office. So if you can engineer for yourself a job where you can work from wherever you want to in the world, that's pretty amazing. The world just changed in such a positive way. Even before COVID, COVID just like really accelerated this. And now, like, man, you guys have such an amazing opportunity if you're about to graduate. Like, you can go wherever you want in the world, especially a year from now, the world will be fully open. Like, take advantage of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about kind of working from home or working not in an office.
Yeah.
Because with remote school, it's kind of been like that. So how do you still manage to channel your focus and like divide between like free time and work?
Yeah. So the best hack in the world is to live with a bunch of other people who are more motivated than you. So we live in a house with about 6 people in it, and all of them are like the coolest people ever. And we live together in LA. We're now gonna live together in London, and I just like keep adding more and more people to this group. And I like spend a ridiculous amount of time making sure that this team gets to be together. And I have friends who I look at from other schools, this school, et cetera. The people who had the best college experience One of them woke up one morning when they were a sophomore, and they're like, I'm gonna live with my best friends. And actually more than that, I'm gonna pick the coolest people in my grade, and I'm gonna convince them to live together. So they made a list, and they convinced all those people, even if they were not good friends, to live together, and then they all became best friends. And so that's what you should do. Identify in your grade of Brown, or the grade above you, or the grade below you, it doesn't matter what grade people are in, the most awesome people, and get them to live with you. And you'll be amazed. They all work hard. It makes it very easy for you to work hard. They all eat well, you'll eat well. They all work out, you'll work out. They all read books, you'll read books. They all like party on Friday night, you'll party on Friday night. That's, number one. And, use Apple Calendar and Google Calendar to schedule your time. But yeah, really the people is the key. Yeah.
How do you keep your ego in check through your successes? And how do you reconcile that with confidence?
My ego is on a rampage. No, I'm kidding. This is a hard question for me. Because I was joking about my ego is on a rampage, but it's only half a joke. There's a big difference between, the word arrogance has two meanings. If you look it up in the dictionary. The first meaning is to believe that you are better than other people. The second one is to believe that you are better than you actually are. So when I was 18, Jack Dorsey gave a talk at Brown, who's one of the founders of Twitter. And when I talked to him at the end of the talk, I went up to him, I was like, hey, I really admire how you combine engineering and design. I'd love to shadow you for a day in your office in San Francisco. Can I do that? And he was like, maybe. And I was like, great, let me get your secretary's email. So I got her email, and I messaged with her, and it took me about a year, but finally I got that meeting with Jack Dorsey. And it was really cool because, I realized that there's no difference between Jack Dorsey and me. Like, I can build a $100 billion company too. And so I think, for most of my life, I believe that I can do things. And so, there's a lot of ego in there. What is the case is that I never think that I'm better than other people. So, there are no people that my time is not worth. When I was a student at Brown, I spent a tremendous amount of time talking to all the cafeteria staff in the Ratty and the Joe's. I will be the first person to start a conversation with a group of freshmen, or a group of high school students, or a group of middle school students. And I'll invest an unlimited amount of time in them because I'm genuinely interested in what they think. Same thing for people who have ADD, or depression, or anxiety, or disabilities, or who are in I spent a lot of time when I lived in California working through the prison system with Solano State Prison, working with active inmates. And so the key is to make that distinction between believe that you are on, because here's the thing, I often take on things that I have no business taking on. All right, I showed you the song. Yesterday I came up with this idea. I'm gonna make the Read to You album. And I came up with 10 artists that I think are really awesome that I'm gonna co-write a bunch of the songs with. I'm gonna publish it. I'm gonna try to make it a trend on TikTok. But I'm not a professional musician. I'm the CEO of a software company. And yet I believe that I can do this thing. And so that requires some ego. So that develop. What you should never allow is yourself to look down upon others. And I think that's the key to answering that question. And then, so that's my answer. And then the more classic answer to this question would be, well, there's always more for me to learn. There's further along the way for me to go. And that's what people tell you as the typical answer to that, because it's the right answer. The thing is you guys already figured this out. I'm obsessed with learning. There's an unlimited amount for me to learn. And so even if I've already built a really fleshed out model of the universe and a tree of knowledge, there's so much more for me to learn. If I learned everything there is to learn about entrepreneurship, I still got a ton more to learn about computational neuroscience and renewable energy and industrial design and a bunch of other things. So I'm still constantly reading, constantly talking to people because that's the only way to get better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rohit.
Hi,
My
Rogan.
question was, what is the worst piece of advice that you often hear in life for entrepreneurship and why?
What is the worst piece of advice you often hear in life and entrepreneurship, and why? The first one that comes to mind is people will tell you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I sometimes see people who are they're grinding hard, and they're willing to sacrifice short-term well-being for long-term success or gain. And I think that is a very stupid thing to do. It's a fallacy. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can take care of yourself, you can be happy, you can spend time with friends, you can eat well, you can exercise. In fact, it's required. And still, you can accomplish big, huge, audacious goals. You just got to not give up on them. And you have to be mindful of how you invest your time. So there's a great book by Ramit Sethi called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he talks about how to spend your money. And he says, hey, it's very important that you spend an unlimited amount on the things you really care about and are ruthless in counting out the things that you don't care about. I do this, but with my time. I will spend an unlimited amount on gymnastics and parkour, of my time. Same thing for to an extent, music and dance, unlimited amount of time, going to meet new people, that's why I'm here, and definitely on Speechify. But I, for the most part, don't go to parties. Like, I go to maybe one club a year for a friend's birthday. But the second I'm allowed to leave, I leave. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I never have. And partly it's because I did the pros and cons calculation in high school, and it always came out negative. Like, you know, you come over hungover the next day. I like the way that my brain works, and I don't want to edit it. And I like fitness. And I can mitigate, you know, the benefits of drinking by doing all these comfort challenges from 4-hour work week, and then not be shy to talk to people. So I'm just going to do that. And so, yeah, you can have your cake and eat it too, but you just need to be very thoughtful and write down and think about what are the things in life that other people spend time on that are not logical for you. And it might be that for you, it's actually school. Like, you think that it's a waste of time to go to college, so you're gonna go do something else. I loved college. It was like the best experience of my life. But you gotta figure out what makes sense for you. I'll hang around if people want to talk. Thank you guys so much for having me. How's it going, guys? What's your name?
Tom.
Tom. You guys can come, we can all participate. What's your name?
Ian, nice to meet you.
Ian.
Aiden.
Aiden. Ben, nice to meet you. Say it again?
אחלה פרזנטציה.
תודה רבה, אחי. Hi, what's your name?
Tenxian. I was.
Tenxian and?
I was.
Kayla, nice to meet you guys.
Coach, if I'm correct,
For TEDx?
Yeah.
Amazing. Did you guys get my email recently?
No.
Oh, okay. I need to send you an email. Sounds good.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Nice to meet
You too. You were first, yes.
Well, I just say I think I reached out to you last spring, so if it's nice to meet you in person.
You too.
And yeah, just want to introduce myself.
Amazing. Tell me your name one more time.
Tom.
Tom. Great. And what year are you at Brown?
I actually don't go to Brown. I came in with my girlfriend. I go to Tufts.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm a sophomore.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure. Love to talk.
Hey.
So, I mean, I met your sister on Friday.
Yeah.
Just walking around advertising your startup.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm for my own startup. I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
So I got her number. She texted me a couple days ago. She's like, hey, my brother's speaking. Who's your brother? I only got her first name. Obviously, it was you. I saw you speak in March, I think, when you were last year for Startups
Last year.
over Zoom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my question for you, I have like severe ADHD. My question is like, how do you deal with hyperfixation? You said a lot of things that I resonate with.
Do you guys want to come into the conversation with us?
Focusing on very specific things, diving super deep into them.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that and like not getting caught up in the details?
Yeah, it's a very hard problem. So I write a lot. I listen a lot and I write a lot, and I'm constantly making like lists of how to prioritize things. And especially if I'm on airplanes, like airplane, I'm like prioritizing the entire time. And then I commit to those things and I just like focus on those things. And if I get distracted by other things, I built a lot of systems to prevent me from doing that. Like, you know, there's like a child safety lock on the iPhone that you can use for, what is it called? Rescue time? Screen time. Screen time. I set up the child safety lock for screen time so I don't know my own password. So I get like 2 minutes of Instagram, there's no Facebook or YouTube on my phone, I get like 5 minutes of Safari, and when I run out of them, like my brother or my friends need to unlock it for me, and that's the only way that I can use them. Okay. And so my entire, I used ad block to remove the suggestions tab from like YouTube and the main page from LinkedIn. Like I just like find ways of using software to eliminate all my distractions. And I work with other people. That's like key for me. Like it's very hard for me to focus by myself, but if I'm actively sitting with somebody else and doing work, it makes it way easier for me to not go on a tangent. And I always kind of keep what is the final goal that I have in mind. And you know, I force myself to context switch out of it. And if I find that I'm like just like super low, I stop. I go work out, I go have food, I go talk to friends, and then I come back fresh. Awesome. But it's, you know, you just gotta keep testing new systems of how to solve the problem for you. Sure. And so, you know, for me, my dyslexia is like a lot more severe. So like I started by like trying to read, and then I did like Linda Mood-Bell, and then my dad read to me, and then I used audiobooks, and then eventually I made Speechify, because I'm constantly testing new ways of how to try and solve for the ideal way for me to learn. And so do the same thing for yourself.
Awesome.
You got it?
Can I get your email?
Yeah, of course.
I want to shoot you an email, maybe later. Sorry, I don't like hear some.
No worries.
I'll cry. I really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
A lot of things you said, especially with ADHD and dyslexia, I really relate to. It's really interesting to hear you speak again.
Here you go.
Awesome, appreciate it.
You got it. How's it going? Hi, what's your name?
I'm Gayatri.
Gayatri, I'm Cliff, and?
Erin.
Erin, I'm Cliff, and?
Bella.
Bella. Hello, I'm back. Yes, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam, you were next. What's up, Adam?
Oh, I'm next? Okay. I just wanted to say your whole story. I came in at the end because I had an appointment, and I was walking home because I started writing, and then it stopped. And I was like, I've been waiting to see this actually. It was really inspiring to see your ADHD like success story, and then I like actually just found out about your app about like a week ago
Yeah.
for like a SAS appointment. I was trying to get audiobooks because that's how I've always read in high school, and then they were like, you gotta get.
No way! Finally, you'd be surprised. C's like gave me a lot less support for Speechify than I expected they would.
They forced me to like go get a neuropsych exam yesterday. I got one like when I was 7 or something.
Yeah.
And I've like never thought about it since.
Yeah.
These audiobooks, and then like I spent my whole day yesterday just so I could get audiobooks. But I finally downloaded the app.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Make sure to get the Chrome extension as well.
Okay.
It's like life-changing. And listen fast.
Okay. Which voice
Amazing.
do you recommend?
I recommend Matthew.
Matthew?
But I actually use Alex, which is the not HD Mac voice, because the HD voices mumble at really fast speeds, and I like to listen really fast. And the lower quality voices, because they're not a deep learning neural net, they sound really good at lower quality. Sorry, at fast speeds, because they have pre-designated spaces between words. So I personally use Alex, but I recommend most people start with Matthew and upgrade to Alex when they can start listening like above like 450.
Wow, 450.
But you'd be surprised, it's very easy to learn, especially if you listen to podcasts or audiobooks for lecture capture.
Yeah, I think I signed up for a course I found really interesting. Then only like after the first class, it was like you have to read a book every week.
What's the course?
It's So You Want to Change the World. It's through anthropology.
Sounds like a good course. You should take it. Just find the audiobooks, and when they don't have it,
really loving the
get the PDFs,
Yeah.
and then put them into Speechify. And then if you don't have access to the PDF, like don't give up. Like find a way to get the PDF. Like crack Kindle with like it's called something Elf, and find a way to get the PDF, or get like the scanned version from C's, and then use Speechify, and it makes it super easy.
What did you major in at Brown again?
I did an independent concentration in renewable energy engineering. So it was a mix of physics, engineering, computer science. And then I took a lot of classes in biotechnology and philosophy and design.
So, yeah, I was actually really fascinated by like renewable energy and engineering. Like I don't feel like environmental engineering really covers like the actual engineering that needs to go into solving environmental
Correct.
problems.
I have a very Promethean scientific view of it. I just like energy. And I, you know, my focus is not I want to like save the environment. It's like I know how to save the environment. It's by making renewable energy more efficient. And so if you look in the IC catalog, there's a renewable energy engineering major that you could do if you wanted to.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How did that like transform into what you do nowadays? Though?
It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Do you still find that experience useful?
Of course. So it was more important for me to be able to just take the classes that I wanted and not take the classes that I didn't want. So half the classes I took at Brown, I didn't have the prereqs for. And I have to convince the professors to let me into the class without the prereqs. Like I took a bunch of like master's courses and like RISD courses like I was not qualified to take. But I was like, I don't care if I do badly. Like 2 weeks in, I can decide to take a pass-fail. So I took a bunch of classes pass-fail too. An independent concentration made it so I didn't have any requirements for other stuff. And so I didn't need to waste time doing like econometrics, for example, or other classes, or like electricity and magnetism was useful, but circuits I didn't want to take because I didn't find it to be useful to me. And like CS33, I also didn't want to take. So it was useful because it let me optimize my time to take the classes that I wanted and not the classes that I didn't want.
I feel like when I'm doing something I want to do, I can do it like 24/7.
Exactly. I treated myself like a varsity athlete. Like varsity athletes, they have practice every single day and they have games on the weekends. And somehow they're still doing, you know, neuroscience. So if they can do it, you can do it too. So like maybe talk to friends who are athletes and see how they manage their time. I lived on campus and I was on meal plan all 4 years, so I didn't need to waste my time cooking. And a lot of the times if I went to the ratty and I was in crunch with class, I would take my food and I would eat it in the class while doing the class. And I would go to parties Friday and Saturday, but not the rest of the week. And I didn't drink and didn't smoke, so that saved a lot of time. Yeah, that's the high level. Yeah, and I did things I enjoyed. Oh, lastly, in the beginning of every semester, I would focus on the classes. You know, I'd make sure that I had an annual of the classes, and then you'd start getting closer to the midterm. I do the first midterm, I do, you know, good. And then the second that happened, you know, I was like doing class, startup, and then it flipped. And it was basically only focused on the startup, barely focused on the class. And then right before the next midterm, it would switch again, and then it would switch again. So the nice thing about Brown having semesters, as opposed to quarters, is you can do that.
So I just started like a software-based company.
Amazing.
And so I've been working on it since like May. I'm the front-end developer as
Yes.
well as like the one that develops all the business side of things.
Yeah.
And working with all the users and everything.
Amazing.
And so I'm like, my partner is the back-end guy, but back-end's like way more complicated.
Yep.
It takes so much more time. And we're working on building our back-end team right now. So bringing like 1 to 2 more people.
Yes.
And so I've kind of figured out how to bring them on. What's your best advice on like managing the software team like early on? Because I know you started it yourself, but then
Yeah.
you obviously brought on a lot of
Yeah. So you're saying that you are doing the business side and the front end side. You have a guy who's doing back end side, which is very complicated. How do you manage a software team early on?
Right.
You set a time. Hey, let's meet at 5 p.m. in the lobby of the CIT, and then you meet and you work for 3 hours at a time, and you do that like twice a week. And if you get the bot in to do it more, do it more. And if you can do a class together where you can get credit for doing it, that's all the better. So that's do like a GISP with Hazeltine or something, or Warshare, whoever. And ship. Don't just build, ship.
Right.
Like if you're not embarrassed of what you released, you did it way too late.
No, we're very MVP oriented.
Yeah.
So already shipped our first MVP.
There you go. So that's all you need to do. Yeah. Hi.
I just want to say, at ADOC, I saw you speak, and it inspired me to go into like entrepreneurship.
No way.
And so I'm on the entrepreneurship like certificate path. Like,
Wow.
Right now, and, like now I'm a senior and stuff.
You're a senior now.
I know. Yeah.
You saw me talking at ADOC 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Was it in that room over there?
I believe so.
No way. Was I with Valentine?
I think it was Warshay.
It's Warshare. Okay.
Or Cohen.
Okay. But great. Wait. Oh, so it was in a class.
Yeah.
Got it. Because one thing that I did in all the ADOCs when I was here is I would do an unofficial event where I would message everybody on Facebook in the group to say, hey, I'm gonna like be at this room to talk about stuff, and people would come and would like sit crisscross applesauce on the ground and talk about stuff. But this was probably during a class.
Yeah, it was like a class.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
Thank
great.
you.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just had one other
Yeah,
question
please.
too. Like when you like figure out like what you're passionate about, and like you have like a vision of like how you want to change the world, like using your passions, but you don't necessarily know all the specific details and like the product of like how to do that. Like how do you like narrow down that like broadness into like a specific?
It's very hard. And the answer is, like we said, like not timing the market, time in the market. Like you need to be the surfer who's like sitting there and you constantly swimming, and eventually a wave will come up and take you with it. But do it in the space that you care about, and always have an open mind to changing your mind and trying new things, and connect with people just like this, and write and read and just build tests, constantly build tests. And this guy's building a test. He's probably gonna fail, but like the 20th will not fail. You find in stuff like YouTube, you make 300 videos, you don't know which one will succeed. In SEO, same thing. But one will succeed, you never know which one. Same thing with ads. You just gotta put in the reps. And if you put in enough reps, one of them will, go up for you. So just put in the reps, and eventually something will catch, but you will never know what it is before you do it.
Thank you.
So you got it.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you.
Of course.
It was, I'm a first year, and
Yeah.
I've only been here a few weeks, but it's just the perfect way to start off.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, just like get a lot of like introspective. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What are you studying at Brown?
I think CS. And
Amazing.
Public health.
Amazing. That's a very good combo.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You got it. How about you?
Yeah, hi. I loved your talk. Honestly, like the stuff about risk taking is amazing because like, I asked you a question in front of like all these people I didn't know. I never do that. Like I'm bilingual. My parents are from like La República Dominicana and Puerto Rico, so it's like speaking out in front of people like this, especially.
But your English is excellent.
Gracias. Like,
Your English is way better than my English was. I was like, can I have a cup of coffee? What are you doing today?
Yeah, so it's just really inspiring. Like I don't have ADD, but I understand like it's for kind of struggle like that.
Yeah.
Just thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be scared to talk in class. You should do so this is your comfort challenge. So I mentioned comfort. At least once a day, you got to raise your hand and say something in class. And you'll see that the impact it'll have in your life over time is tremendous, because it'll make it easier to come up to people, to talk to them, to do it. Like those are high stake moments. And so you got to put in the reps, right? And so, speaking in class is the easiest way to put in the reps to practice. And then there's a great class, hopefully it's still tapped, by Barbara Tannenbaum called Public Speaking. Highly recommended. So try to get into that. It'll help you too.
Awesome.
You got it.
I had a
De nada.
question about making friends.
Yes.
Like making new friends. So, like, I sometimes have trouble with like after the first meeting, like taking it like up from there. So do you have any advice about
Yes. Take them to the gym. Easiest thing. Yeah, I saw you do the thing before. Get their number, And here's how to get someone's number. You go, hey, would love to hang out later. Let me get your number. And you give them your phone with contacts open, and they put in their name and their number. And then you text them back your name, so now you have a thread. And then that night you go, hey, I'm gonna go to the gym at 5 p.m. You wanna join? And they'll probably tell you, I can't today, but like I'm done another time. You're like, great, how about Tuesday at 3? And they're like, sure. Boom.
Here's your number. Can I have your number? You want to go to the gym?
Hey, well done.
Do it.
There you go, you got it. And then invite people to go to dinner with you. Like you're gonna go to the Ratty or the Read Up anyway. Like you're like, yo, you wanna come to you
sort of need that as somebody,
Yeah.
an artist who's on the rise.
Totally.
Trying to make connections.
Totally.
Do you have any advice on
Yes.
like, how
Yes.
to work on that?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a million pieces of advice, and I'm just gonna talk as an artist. As an artist, you probably admire a bunch of other artists, and you think, wow, these guys rock. So, okay, it's probably difficult to get Kanye to respond to a DM. But go for someone who's a little, up and coming. So there's a guy, Connor Price, who is a rapper I really think is amazing. And he was like blowing up on TikTok. I think, when I first came across him, he had like 50K followers, and then he went to 100, and now he's at like 500. And I was like jamming to his music a lot. And I sent him a DM on Instagram. I was like, hey, I think your music is amazing. You remind me of a mix between Alec Benjamin, Lin-Manuel Miranda, John Bellion. I want to learn your style. I'd love to hire you as a coach. I'll pay you X amount per hour to do a Zoom call with me. And he's young, he's my age. Would you be down? And he messaged me back. And he went, yo, I love what you're working on with this app. No worries about paying me. Happy to help. Here's my number. And then we set a Zoom call for 2 days from there. And then we set a weekly Zoom call. And then he helped me a lot to get better at writing. And he also helped me a lot with my flow. And I do this all the time. And other people do it with me too. We were laughing about this. We got a DM to the Speechify account from Chance the Rapper the other day. And he was like, hey, can I meet the founders? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so Chance does a bunch of work with inner city kids in Chicago and education. And I was like, great, let's see if we can help there, and maybe you can help me, improve some of my rapping a little bit. My little brother is really good at music, so we'll always do it together, and just find the opportunities. And in Hebrew, there's a great word, lefargen. It's to give praise to other people. So start by not giving an ask. Just message people, hey, I came across the song by you, and I've been bumping to it for the last week. I love it. I'll give you one other story. There was a day I walked out of my dorm in Hegeman, and in new releases on Spotify, the first song from Hamilton came up. And I was like, this is amazing. I cried on the way to class listening to that song. And I didn't pay attention to my lecture. I just played the song on loop, went to the piano room, I forget what it's called, by T.F. Green, learned how to play it, went to my next class, didn't pay attention. I was like, okay, who can I write a song like this about? And I was like, Theodore Roosevelt or Elon Musk? No, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I wrote a rap album about the life of Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was a great experience, but I still was awed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And I knew that it would be hard to get to him. And I learned that he had a band in college called Freestyle Love Supreme. And the guy who led the band, his name was Anthony. He didn't continue doing music, but he's good at it. He went to work in marketing. So I found his email and I emailed him. I also emailed Lin, but Lin didn't respond, but Anthony responded. And I got Anthony to meet up with me. And I went to his office and we freestyle rap together for a while. And he taught me this great concept, which is not a rap battle, it's a love battle, where you freestyle rap about how awesome the other person is. So I do that a lot with my friends now. And so just message people and see if they'll hop on a Zoom with you or grab coffee with you or meet up with you. And you have nothing to lose. And if you're afraid by asking something, just initially message telling them that they're awesome.